Chapter 120. Hu Jingyao looked at Su Qingsang's face and cleared his throat. Actually, my family is quite well off. How well off is that? I have a little money. It couldn't be as simple as a little money, could it? I had a conflict with my family before. I came out and then I met you. Afraid that Su Qingsang wouldn't believe him, Hu Jingyao took her hand again. I have nothing to do with my family now. That's it? That's it? That's it. Hu Jingyao nodded heavily, afraid that she wouldn't believe him. Did you have a serious conflict with your family? Yes. Hu Jingyao nodded hurriedly. It was very serious. Now I've left my family and started all over again. That's why I didn't tell you. Su Qingsang didn't speak. He couldn't tell if she was angry or something else. Hu Jingyao looked at her carefully. Honey, you're not angry, are you? In other words, you've left your family and are living here alone. Yes. Hu Jingyao nodded. So you see, I'm really pitiful. Pitiful? How was he pitiful? Su Qingsang almost laughed out of anger. With his personality, how could he allow himself to be pitiful? You're not an only child, are you? If he was, it would be bad for his family if he came here alone. I'm not. Hu Jingyao's voice was very soft. If Su Qingsang looked carefully, she would find that Hu Jingyao's eyes were a little strange. You're not lying to me about anything else, are you? Su Qingsang looked at him suspiciously. Why did she still feel that something was wrong? No, I promise not. Hu Jingyao raised 3 fingers. In a place where Su Qingsang couldn't see, he secretly put his other hand behind his back and made a cross. Su Qingsang wanted to ask more questions, but her phone rang. She picked it up and found that there was an emergency at the hospital. I have to go back to work. She was supposed to work the night shift today. Su Qingsang quickly got out of bed, but fell forward because of her weak legs. Hu Jingyao quickly caught her. If you're tired, don't go to work. Haha. Su Qingsang sneered. Who made me tired? Me. Hu Jingyao's momentum weakened again. It's good that you know. Thinking of that, Su Qingsang added, next time don't drink. Yes. Hu Jingyao raised his hand and saluted. I promise I won't drink anymore. I'll listen to my wife. His playful look gave Su Qingsang a headache. If she were his parents, she would probably want to kick him out of the house too, wouldn't she? Hu Jingyao's car stopped at the entrance of the hospital. Su Qingsang hurriedly got out of the car. Wifey. Hu Jingyao looked at her, and there was a flash of hesitation in his eyes. What? Su Qingsang was in a hurry to get into the hospital, so she ignored the hesitant look on Hu Jingyao's face. Nothing, you haven't given me a good. Why kiss? Hu Jingyao smiled again and his playful face returned. This person really made people speechless. Su Qingsang rolled her eyes, ignored him, and went straight into the hospital. Looking at her back, Hu Jingyao didn't hurry to start the car. Instead, he took out his phone. He pressed a few numbers and coldly instructed the person on the other end of the line, It's me. The cooperation with the He family is now completely stopped. Chapter 121. Su Qingsang rushed to the hospital and brought in a woman who was 7 months pregnant. She was said to be 7 months pregnant, but in fact she was not even 7 months pregnant. She accidentally tripped when she got off the bus. Zhang Qiubai and the other 2 doctors all had surgeries. Su Qingsang followed Deputy Director Chen into the operating room. Su Qingsang and Deputy Director Chen put in a lot of effort and finally stabilized the situation. However, this pregnant woman would probably have to stay in bed for the next 3 months. Before Su Qingsang could change out of her surgical gown, the pregnant woman's family came. The pregnant woman's husband scolded the woman who had just woken up. You're already an adult, don't you know how to ride a car? How did he fall from the car? What if you hurt my son? That's right. The pregnant woman's mother-in-law also scolded, What kind of woman are you? Let's see what you'll do if you drop my grandson. What a useless woman. The mother and son scolded each other fiercely. The pregnant woman's face was pale. She shrank back and did not make a sound. Seeing that, Su Qingsang frowned. She couldn't help but say, This is a ward. Please be quiet. Although the pregnant woman's family stopped making a fuss, their faces were still full of anger. Especially after hearing about the fees in the future. The pregnant woman's mother-in-law's face darkened. Seeing that, Su Qingsang asked the nurse to come in and ask the family members to leave. Before she could recover from the shock, Su Yusin came again. Since Bai Jihan's operation last time, she didn't know why the bleeding had not stopped. She was shy and too embarrassed to go outside to check, so Su Yusin had to come to Su Qingsang again. Su Qingsang re-examined Bai Jihan and told her some precautions. Only then did Su Yusin send Bai Jihan back. President's Office of Li Corporation. Li Qianxue listened to her subordinate's report, and her expression was very ugly. Su Yusin actually went to see Su Qingsang again? She couldn't believe it when Su Peijian told her about it. After all these years Su Qingsang had always behaved herself. She was not one to vent her anger on others. She had no intention of inflicting on Su Qingsang the pain that the appearance of that woman had brought her. However, her sore spot was Su Peijian and Su Yusin. She would never allow Su Qingsang to hurt Su Yusin, even if it was just a possibility. I've heard about it. You can leave first. Tell the secretary to leave. Li Qianxue looked at the computer screen in front of her. Perhaps she should teach Su Qingsang a small lesson. At the very least, he wanted her to recognize her identity. When Hua Jinyao came to pick Su Qingsang up, he found that she didn't seem to be in a good mood. What's wrong? What happened? Su Qingsang shook her head. After she left the hospital, she didn't want to talk about the hospital anymore. Hua Jinyao carefully observed her expression. Honey, I'm fine. My boss gave me the commission. Are you free tomorrow? How about accompanying me to look at the car? Whatever. If you drive it yourself. I'm glad you like it. Of course not. Hua Jinyao shook his head. Give me your car. I want to buy you a new one. What kind of car do you like? I'm fine. In her eyes, there was no difference between 100,000 and a few 100,000 or even 1,000,000 for a transportation tool. Honey, don't be like this. Then tell me, what do you like? He took her to buy clothes, but she didn't like them. He gave her jewelry, but she said she couldn't wear it. Now he bought her a car, but she said it was whatever. Chapter 122. I really don't have any special preferences. As an illegitimate daughter, Su Qingsang didn't think she had the right to develop her own hobbies. Besides, she wasn't in the mood today. Honey, are you okay? Su Qingsang shook her head. She was just thinking about Zhang Mei, the pregnant woman who was admitted today. Zhang Mei accidentally fell on the bus. Her husband and mother-in-law knew about it, but none of them cared about her physical condition. Instead, they kept blaming her. She had been in the hospital for a long time, and it wasn't the first time she had seen something like this. But she still felt very uncomfortable. Was the purpose of a woman's existence just to have children? Honey? Hua Jinyao asked again when he didn't get a response from her. Su Qingsang turned to look at him and suddenly thought of the contraceptive pills in her bag. Hua Jinyao, what do you think if I don't want to have children? She was inexplicably nervous. Children. Hua Jinyao hadn't thought about this before. Nothing. If you don't want to have children, then don't. Really? Of course. Hua Jinyao reached out and rubbed her head. Isn't there a saying that goes, I'm a girl and I can have children if I want to? Pfft. Su Qingsang almost choked on her own saliva. Where did you hear that? It's a slogan some female colleagues in my company shouted on March 8 this year. They feel pressured and don't want to have a second child. Su Qingsang nodded. She understood it very well. Although they could have 2 children now, many people actually didn't want to have one. Why do you still pay attention to your female colleagues? Many of them are beautiful, right? Su Qingsang joked. Hua Jinyao hurriedly raised 3 fingers. Really? None of those women are prettier than my wife. Keep bragging. Su Qingsang was aware of her own appearance. She was only slightly above average. It's true. You'll know when you see that I'm not working in that company anymore. Su Qingsang made a long "oh" sound. So you're saying that there are too few beautiful women in your previous company, so you quit? There are a lot of beautiful women in that company now. Hua Jinyao didn't know what to say. Looking at Su Qingsang's smiling face, he suddenly leaned over. Honey, are you jealous? Who's jealous? She didn't want to get jealous. Honey, don't be jealous. I've said it before, in my heart, my wife is the most beautiful. Other women can't even compare to a finger of yours. Glib tongue. That was enough. Honey, I'm really not a glib talker. Look at my mouth, it's not greasy at all. As for whether it was slippery or not, do you want to give it a try? As he spoke, he deliberately moved closer to her, looking as if he wanted Su Qingsang to appraise him. Su Qingsang couldn't bear it anymore. Why are you still driving? Do you want us to get home at midnight? Hua Jinyao quickly started the car. Before he stepped on the accelerator, he leaned over and kissed Su Qingsang hard on the cheek. Don't worry, wife. You're the prettiest. Su Qingsang couldn't stand it anymore and turned to look at the street outside. However, the curl of her lips revealed her joyful mood. She didn't expect that a few words from Hua Jinyao would be able to calm her down so quickly. Chapter 123. What Su Qingsang didn't expect was that when she arrived at the hospital the next day, the pregnant woman named Zhang Mei was not well again. She had fallen in the ward and was bleeding profusely. She and Zhang Qiubai tried their best but failed to save Zhang Mei's baby. It was a baby girl, a fully formed baby girl. No matter how much Su Qingsang saw it, she couldn't help feeling sad. What surprised her was that Zhang Mei's family didn't scold her today, even though they had made a big fuss yesterday. Zhang Mei had been quiet since the baby was gone. She had been lying there without saying a word or moving. Su Qingsang was only an obstetrician. She comforted them and told them some things to take note of before turning around and leaving. Zhuo Hongqian had gone to a hospital in another city for an academic exchange last week and had just returned today. He came to see Su Qingsang as soon as he came back. The two of them agreed to eat together. The hospital's cafeteria was on the first floor behind the inpatient department. It was also convenient for family members to buy food for the patients. Su Qingsang and Zhuo Hongqian were halfway through their meal when they heard screams and noises outside. She and Zhuo Hongqian looked at each other for a few seconds, then got up at the same time and rushed outside. The bloody scene in front of her made Su Qingsang, who was used to seeing life and death, feel nauseous. Zhang Mei, who she and Zhang Qiubai had just saved in the morning, was lying on the ground with a pool of blood beside her. Zhuo Hongqian was stunned for a moment and quickly rushed over. "Quick, call a cart." Su Qingsang reacted quickly and followed him. Before the cart arrived, she looked at Zhuo Hongqian and shook her head. "She's not breathing." Su Qingsang's eyes were red after she said those words. Zhang Mei's eyes were wide open as if she was still looking at the blue sky above her head. Su Qingsang reached out with trembling hands to close her eyelids. "Qingsang?" Zhuo Hongqian noticed that she was not in a good mood. Su Qingsang covered her mouth and stood there, her heart throbbing uncomfortably. "She's not breathing," Su Qingsang said again. The scene was chaotic. Some people were screaming, some were taking pictures, and some were rushing over. Zhuo Hongqian helped Su Qingsang up. "Qingsang, are you okay?" "She's my patient." Su Qingsang watched as someone covered Zhang Mei's body with a white cloth. Tears welled up in her eyes. "She was fine this morning." "It's none of your business." Zhuo Hongqian glanced upstairs. "She probably jumped down on her own." Su Qingsang remained silent. She gently pulled Zhuo Hongqian's hand away. The police came and so did the people from the hospital administration. It was noisy and the hospital was in a mess. Su Qingsang stayed in her office, waiting for the results. Soon the results were out. Zhang Mei committed suicide. The police were still investigating the natural causes. As Zhang Mei's doctor, Su Qingsang, who had been involved in Zhang Mei's surgeries for 2 consecutive days, was also called in for questioning. This matter lasted until the evening, when the police finally finished questioning everyone. When Su Qingsang walked out of the hospital, the cordon had been removed and the police had left. Wu Jinyao was leaning against the side of the car, waiting for her. When he saw her coming out, he quickly walked over and said, "Honey, are you off work? I have an appointment with someone to see the car today. Shall we go now?" Su Qingsang walked past him and headed outside without stopping. Chapter 124. I want to go home. Su Qingsang's voice was very soft and sounded very tired. She really wasn't in the mood to look at cars today. "All right, let's go home." Wu Jinyao looked at her pale face and took her to the car without asking what had happened. From beginning to end, Su Qingsang didn't say a word. She just stared blankly out of the car window. Wu Jinyao turned to look at her from time to time. He couldn't hide the worry on his face. "Wife." Su Qingsang closed her eyes and didn't want to talk. Wu Jinyao stopped talking and sped up. Sister Lu had already prepared dinner. When she saw them coming in, she greeted them. "Sister Lu, you go back first. We'll clean up the rest tomorrow." Seeing Su Qingsang's expression, Sister Lu knew that something was up. She nodded and turned to leave. "Honey, let's eat first." Wu Jinyao helped Su Qingsang sit down at the dining table. Seeing that she didn't move, he got up and served her a bowl of soup. "Sister Lu must have made this soup early in the morning. Drink it while it's hot." Su Qingsang held the bowl of soup. The temperature of the soup made her feel a little better. She picked it up and took a sip, then put it down. "What's wrong? Is it very hot?" Wu Jinyao kept looking at her. "Let it go for a while. Do you want to eat first? I'll go get you some rice." "No need." Su Qingsang stood up. "I'm not eating anymore." She turned to leave, but Wu Jinyao wouldn't let her. He quickly pulled her hand and made her sit down again. "What happened to you?" Even if he had no appetite, he still had to eat, right? "What if I'm hungry?" "I'm not hungry." Even if you're not hungry, you still have to eat. Hu Jiniao was very insistent. He pressed her shoulders and didn't let her get up. Just eat whatever you like. I said I don't want to eat it. After saying that, Su Qingsang saw Hu Jiniao's frightened face. She withdrew her hand and looked a little disappointed. Sorry. I didn't mean to yell at you. I know. Hu Jiniao nodded and looked at her. He reached out and pulled her body over, letting her sit on his lap. Su Qingsang struggled, but she was no match for his strength. Hu Jiniao, what happened? Nothing. Su Qingsang didn't want to talk. This was the first time. This was the first time a pregnant woman she had taken care of had committed suicide in front of her. Honey. Hu Jiniao reached out and held her face in his hands. His dark eyes looked straight into her face. His expression was as deep as the sea. You're my wife. I'm your husband. Is there anything you can't tell me? His palm was firm and warm. His expression was focused and sincere. The emotions that Su Qingsang had been suppressing for the whole afternoon suddenly seemed to be unable to be suppressed at this moment. Zhang Mei is dead. Who was Zhang Mei? She is pregnant. Su Qingsang briefly explained what had happened that day. I don't know why she wanted to commit suicide. She was still young enough to have more children. Hu Jiniao hugged her tightly in his arms and gently patted her back. It's none of your business. Honey, listen, this has nothing to do with you. Su Qingsang lowered her eyes and said nothing. How could it not be related? If she had paid more attention to the pregnant woman's emotions at that time, if she had asked the nurse to keep an eye on her, she wouldn't. Honey. Hu Jiniao let go of her and turned to hold her shoulders. He stared at her and said, Look at me and listen. It has nothing to do with you. Don't think about it. Chapter 125. She was the first pregnant woman to commit suicide in my hands. You're wrong. Her suicide wasn't because of you. It was because of her family. Hu Jiniao's voice was very soft. Where were her family when she committed suicide? I don't know. Su Qingsang really didn't know. She seemed to have seen the pregnant woman's family when people came and went in the hospital today, but she really wasn't sure if they were there at the time. So you see, she just lost her child and her family wasn't with her. What does this have to do with you? Su Qingsang didn't say anything. Even if it had nothing to do with her, she was still very sad. Okay, honey. Hu Jiniao patted her on the shoulder. Don't think about it. You eat first. If there's anything, wait for the results of the police first. Now you eat first. Hu Jiniao. Even if you don't eat or drink now, that pregnant woman's life won't come back. What's more, you don't want to see something like this happen. So don't blame yourself anymore, okay? His voice was as gentle as a hot spring, slowly flowing into her heart. His hand on her back had been gently patting her back in a soothing manner, and her emotions slowly relaxed. Su Qingsang pursed her lips into a straight line. She looked up at Hu Jiniao. He had a serious expression on his face as he comforted her. It was completely different from his usual carefree and cheeky appearance. Hu Jiniao seemed to be more handsome and charming like this. How is it? Did you suddenly find your husband very handsome? Hu Jiniao touched his chin and looked distressed. Actually, sometimes I'm also very troubled. Being so handsome is simply infuriating. Su Qingsang couldn't listen to it anymore. This person couldn't be serious for more than 3 minutes. But his words also successfully diverted her attention. She sat back in her seat, closed the bowl of soup and took a sip. Yes, the temperature of the soup was just right. She tried to be more open-minded. There were some things that she really couldn't control. Hu Jiniao finally picked up the bowl and began to eat. Su Qingsang glanced at him. She didn't want to admit it, but she had to. After such a thing happened, if she came back alone in this cold home, she would definitely feel worse than now. It seemed that with the addition of Hu Jiniao, some things had begun to change. Su Qingsang didn't think it was a bad thing to have such a change happen again. Su Qingsang calmed down, but when she went to the hospital the next day, she found that the lobby of the hospital was packed with people. The man was Zhang Mei's husband. It had only been a day, but he was now followed by a large group of people. Zhang Mei's husband noticed her when she walked in. He raised his hand and pointed at Su Qingsang. It's her, it's this doctor. She killed Ame. Su Qingsang was stunned. Before she could react, her body had already been dragged over by one of the men standing beside Zhang Mei's husband. What are you doing? Su Qingsang struggled to get rid of the man's hand and took a big step back. He straightened his clothes and looked at the large group of people in front of him. This is a hospital. What do you think this is for? Chapter 126. Quacks hurt people. Punish Quack severely. The group of people behind Zhang Mei's husband shouted together. Calm down. Su Qingsang had finally calmed down from yesterday's depression, but she didn't expect to encounter such a thing when she came here early in the morning. The police have come to investigate Zhang Mei's death. It was a suicide. I don't understand why you're doing this. You forced her to commit suicide. Zhang Mei's husband didn't give in. If you didn't kill my child, why would my wife commit suicide? It was the first time that Su Qingsang had met such an unreasonable person. Your wife fell. It was difficult to save the child. Your wife fell and it's going to be hard to save the child. Moreover, she had fallen down in the ward. Your wife's death was an accident. We didn't want it to happen. No matter what, Su Qingsang couldn't let the hospital take the blame. No matter what, Su Qingsang couldn't let the hospital take the blame. She couldn't let herself take the blame. Why couldn't my child be saved if you didn't want it to happen? Aren't you a Class 3 Grade A hospital? Didn't you say that you have the best obstetrics and gynecology department in Lin City? Why couldn't my wife's child be saved? I don't care. My wife died because of you. You forced her to commit suicide. All the treatment procedures and rescue procedures in our hospital are reasonable and compliant. All the consultations and surgeries are carried out with the consent and signature of your family members. We don't understand. I signed because you tricked me. Zhang Mei's husband took a step forward and said in a louder voice, My wife died because of you. Sir, please be reasonable. Your wife's death was an accident. I'll say it again. Our hospital and our doctors didn't want this to happen. You didn't want this to happen, but it did. My wife is dead. Do you want to let it go like this? Behind them, there were doctors who had heard the news. Not only Zhang Qiubai, but Zhuo Hongqian also came. The other two doctors in the department and the deputy director, Qin Xiaoyu, were all here. However, Zhang Mei's husband didn't seem to see those doctors. He only stared at Su Qingsang. Quacks hurt people. We are going to punish the murderer severely today. It wasn't that Su Qingsang didn't know that there was a profession called medical troublemaker in this world, but she never thought that one day she would encounter it herself. You guys calm down. Su Qingsang looked at Zhang Qiubai and the others who were rushing over and felt more confident. The police have already come to a conclusion on this matter. There won't be any results if you keep making a ruckus like this. You all heard it? You all heard it. The hospital was irresponsible. Killing someone and not taking responsibility? How can we just let it go like this? Zhang Mei's husband shouted, and the people he brought started to fight. Do it. Smash it. Do it. Smash. Su Qingsang didn't even have time to dodge and was pushed by the leader of the group. Zhuo Hongqian, who was behind her, quickly supported her and led her backward. But there were many people in front. It was too late for the security guards to stop them. What happened next was like a farce. Zhang Mei's family members were agitated. One by one they stepped forward. Su Qingsang wanted them to stop. Chapter 127. Behind her was the reception desk. Su Qingsang was about to fall and hit the desk. Qingsang, be careful. Zhuo Hongqian quickly reached out his hand and pulled Su Qingsang out. He saved Su Qingsang but fell to the ground. His back hit the desk and he groaned in pain. Are you okay? Su Qingsang was anxious. What was going on? She helped Zhuo Hongqian up. Zhuo Hongqian was hit in the back but he was worried that Su Qingsang would be hurt, so he helped her to the side. Zhang Mei's husband didn't give up and wanted to attack the doctor. Fortunately, the security guards finally showed their strength at this time, blocking together to prevent a bigger conflict. It was still a mess. With the intervention of the police, the chaos finally calmed down. Apart from Zhuo Hongqian, 2 other doctors and 3 nurses were injured. The reception desk was smashed and some equipment in the lobby was also damaged. Zhang Mei's family was taken away by the police. It was the same for the leaders of the group. It was a mess. Su Qingsang had nothing to do, so she helped the hospital staff clean up the reception desk. According to preliminary estimates, the total damage to the facilities was more than 200,000 yuan. Su Qingsang's first hospital was a famous Class 3 Grade A hospital in Lin City. Once the news came out, it went viral on Weibo. Netizens who didn't know what happened scolded the hospital, saying that it was the irresponsible doctors who did it. Zhang Mei's death changed from a simple case of a pregnant woman's suicide to a hot topic. Su Qingsang also became a key figure in this incident. It had nothing to do with her. She was just a patient. She was one of the doctors who rescued Zhang Mei the day before. Yesterday, she was also one of the doctors who rescued Zhang Mei when she lost her baby. As a result, Su Qingsang was in the eye of the storm. The public opinion was one-sided. They were all scolding the doctors and the hospital. The family members outside didn't dare to make trouble anymore, but they didn't leave either. They put up a white banner saying, "Quack doctors hurt people. A life for a life." That was bullsh**. Zhang Mei fell down on her own and accidentally miscarried her child. Why did it sound like the hospital had to pay the price from these people's mouths? Before Su Qingsang could think of a way to reason with the family members, she was informed by the hospital office that she was suspended. What? Su Qingsang widened her eyes and looked at Deputy Director Yang. This doesn't make sense, does it? She hadn't done anything wrong. Why was she suspended? Dr. Su, we didn't want to do this either. But this matter has become so big that we have no other choice. Even if there's no other way, it can't be handled like this, right? Su Qingsang tried to calm herself down. The more it was like this, the calmer she had to be. All the procedures are complete. There was nothing wrong with the rescue process. Whether the pregnant woman was forced to terminate her pregnancy or jump off a building, it has nothing to do with our hospital. It was true that she blamed herself for the accidental death of the pregnant woman, but there was no reason for her to put all the blame on herself. I know, we all know. Deputy Director Yang looked helpless. But so what if we know? The patient's family doesn't know, the netizens don't know, and the public doesn't know. Chapter 128. Not really. Deputy Director Yang looked like he was having a headache. This time not only you, but also Deputy Director Chin is also suspended. You go home first and wait for the results of the investigation before deciding what to do next. Su Qingsang's lips were pressed into a straight line, and a hint of depression flashed across her beautiful face. Since things had come to this, she could only accept the result calmly. Okay, I got it. I hope the hospital can take into account the actual situation and prove our doctor's innocence. Dr. Su, Deputy Director Yang. I'm not the only one who's worried about this. It's about all doctors. If it's our responsibility, we have to bear it. If it's not our responsibility, we won't bear the injustice. Seeing Deputy Director Yang's serious face, Su Qingsang's attitude was unprecedentedly firm. If this matter can't prove our innocence and get the right treatment, who would dare to look for a doctor in the future? Who would dare to trust a doctor? Who would dare to be a doctor? I got it. Deputy Director Yang nodded. Dr. Su, you can go back first. I see. Deputy Chief Yang nodded. Dr. Su, you can go back first. Su Qingsang saw Hu Jinyao rushing over when she came out of the hospital office. She didn't expect him to appear at this hour. Su Qingsang was stunned and looked at him blankly. For a moment she didn't know how to react. She didn't expect him to show up at this hour. Su Qingsang was stunned and looked at him blankly. For a moment she didn't know how to react. Hu Jinyao took a few steps forward and stood in front of her. He held her shoulders and looked at her from head to toe. Are you hurt? Are you hurt? I'm fine. Su Qingsang shook her head. Why are you here? I'm fine. Su Qingsang shook her head. Why are you here? As soon as the family members came to make a scene, there was news on Weibo. He was still in a meeting at that time. When he finished the meeting, the matter had become big and the police were involved. He saw Su Qingsang's photo on Weibo and was afraid that she would be hurt, so he rushed over so quickly. Something happened. Su Qingsang looked around and didn't want to tell him here. But it's fine now. You're really not hurt. No. Su Qingsang thought of Zhuo Hongqin. Senior was there and he blocked it for me. Speaking of this, Su Qingsang still felt very guilty. Senior seemed to be hurt a little badly. I was going to see him now. Hearing Su Qingsang mention Zhuo Hongqin, Hu Jinyao's mouth twitched. Sure. I'll go with you. I have to thank him for saving you. Zhuo Hongqin's injury was a bruise. He was also a doctor, so he found some ointment and applied it before returning to his office. When Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao arrived, he had just sent one of his patients out. Qingsang, you're here? Zhuo Hongqin acted as if he didn't see Hu Jinyao beside him. I heard that someone from the hospital administration is looking for you. Are you all right? No. Su Qingsang shook her head. They just want me to rest at home for a few days. I'm fine. Why? Zhuo Hongqin frowned. I'm going to talk to my father now. Senior brother. Su Qingsang stopped him and said, it's normal for the hospital administration to deal with the situation like this. Speaking of which, I'll just take it as a break. But, Senior Marshal brother, thank you for saving me just now. But let's leave it at that. The family members were so emotional. As the hospital, they had to give the family members and the public an explanation. But Chapter 129. I'm fine. Zhuohongshan's lower back was actually still aching, but he didn't want Su Qingsang to worry. It's just a small injury. Don't worry too much. That's good. Hua Jinyao stood at the back and watched the two of them express their concern for each other by saying that they were fine. He felt like his teeth were about to fall off. Sour, so sour. He stretched out his long arms and pulled Su Qingsang into his arms. He took a small step forward, blocking most of Su Qingsang's body, and looked at Zhuohongshan. I heard that you saved Qingsang? Thank you so much. How about this? It's almost lunchtime. Why don't I be the host and invite senior brother to join us for a meal? Su Qingsang also looked at Zhuohongshan. He had helped her, so she should treat him to a meal. Zhuohongshan looked at Hua Jinyao's hand on Su Qingsang's shoulder and felt that it was very painful. If he ate with them again, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to eat. It's okay. I have a surgery in the afternoon. That's a pity. Hua Jinyao glanced at Su Qingsang as he spoke. Since you're not free, let's do it another day. Qingsang is also tired today. Why don't we go home and rest first? Okay. Su Qingsang nodded. I still have to go to the department to hand over my work. I'll go with you. Hua Jinyao put his arm around her waist. Let's go. We'll go now. Then we'll go first. Okay, goodbye. Goodbye, senior. It was Hua Jinyao who spoke. Before Su Qingsang could raise her hand to wave, he had already turned around and led her to the direction of the elevator. Zhuohongshan looked at their backs with an obvious disappointment in his eyes. Why are you walking so fast? Su Qingsang's demeanor was only maintained until they entered the elevator. I haven't finished talking to senior. Hua Jinyao turned to look at her. Why do you have so much to say? You guys stay in the same hospital every day. Do you think you don't have enough time to talk? What are you talking about? Su Qingsang felt defeated. Senior's surgery is on the 7th floor. Our obstetrics department is on the 4th floor. How can we talk every day? If he got busy, it would be hard to even see him, okay? Are you regretting it? Hua Jinyao moved closer to her, his face almost touching hers. Su Qingsang took a step back. Hua Jinyao. Honey. Hua Jinyao put his arm around her waist. The person I want to talk to is me. I'm your husband. That's enough. Su Qingsang grabbed his hand. There are surveillance cameras here. So what? Hua Jinyao didn't care at all. It just so happens that the whole hospital knows that you have a husband. It'll also make those male doctors stay away from you. When he spoke, he especially emphasized the word male doctor, which made Su Qingsang want to laugh. Fortunately, the obstetrics and gynecology department in the hospital were all female doctors. If she were in another department, wouldn't Hua Jinyao ask her to quit working? She didn't want to talk to this guy anymore. She went back to her own department, gave some instructions and then left. She followed Hua Jinyao downstairs. Other than Zhang Mei's husband who had been taken away, there were other people outside. Those people were all watching and the banner was still there. Su Qingsang saw it, and her mood became gloomy again. Hua Jinyao clearly felt the change in her mood. He reached out and held her hand tightly. Chapter 130. Su Qingsang shook her head. The guilt and self-blame she felt yesterday had almost dissipated after Zhang Mei's family made such a scene. However, she still felt bad. She felt bad for Zhang Mei and for the baby girl who didn't have time to see the world. The bodies of the poor mother and daughter were still in the morgue. But her husband and her family didn't feel sad at all. Instead, they came here to make a scene. Honey. Hua Jinyao noticed that some of those people were looking at Su Qingsang. He stretched out his hand and pulled her into his embrace. Su Qingsang turned to look at him. The autumn sun was hot. His arms were strong and warm. He held her tightly in his arms, giving her a great sense of security. She felt safe until she got into the car. Honey, don't worry. It'll be fine. Hua Jinyao held Su Qingsang's hand tightly with his free hand, silently supporting her. Su Qingsang looked at him and nodded. Okay. Su Qingsang was still in a bad mood when she got home. Hua Jinyao accompanied her into the room. Su Qingsang sat in the rocking chair and looked out of the window. Seeing her like this, Hua Jinyao left the room. He went to get a glass of water and came back in. Then he sat down beside her. The rocking chair was big, but it was a little crowded for two people. Su Qingsang didn't care about it. She took the glass from Hua Jinyao's hand and took a sip. I'm actually very sad. I didn't expect something like this to happen in the hospital today. What on earth happened? There was a lot of news on the internet. Hua Jinyao didn't believe it. He wanted to hear it from Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang told him what had happened. She started from the beginning, including how Zhang Mei fell, how she was sent to the hospital, and who she was with for the first time and the second time. After she finished, she sighed. I didn't expect that her family would come today after she jumped off the building yesterday. Hua Jinyao's face was serious. He pressed his lips into a straight line and looked at Su Qingsang's side profile. Did you complete all the paperwork? Of course. Everything was signed. What was the reaction of Zhang Mei's family when she jumped off the building yesterday? I don't know. Su Qingsang was so shocked by the sudden news that she didn't have time to pay attention to the family's reaction. The hospital only said to suspend you? It's a temporary suspension. We'll have to wait for the results. What's the worst that could happen? What could it be? It wasn't Hua Jinyao's conspiracy theory. He had a feeling that this matter wasn't as simple as it seemed. The worst result? Su Qingsang thought for a moment and said, it's not to the extent of revoking my medical license. After all, we were not obviously at fault. But if the hospital is determined to sacrifice us to give the public an explanation, then they can only fire me. This was the worst possible outcome. Hua Jinyao nodded and said, it's not a big deal. As long as you have a medical license, it doesn't matter where you become a doctor. How can this be the same? Su Qingsang glanced at him. She really didn't want to explain the difference. This was the first hospital she had interned in and the first hospital that had signed an employment contract with her. Her mentor was also here. She really didn't want to leave the first hospital. All right. It's different. Hua Jinyao took the cup from her hand and drank the rest of the water. You rest for a while. I'll order takeout. Okay. Sister Lu only came to cook at night. She didn't come in the morning or at noon. Hua Jinyao left the room and took the cup to the kitchen. He took out his phone and pressed a few numbers. Chapter 131. He didn't think it was that simple. Not to mention anything else, Su Qingsang had performed 2 surgeries with other people. Why was it that when the medical troublemakers came to make trouble, they decided that it was Su Qingsang? If there was no conspiracy, it would be fine. But if there was, Hua Jinyao's eyes were gloomy. Su Qingsang was easy to talk to, but he wasn't. He wouldn't accept the suspension for no reason. Those who dared to mess with him had to pay the price. He would never let these people bully Su Qingsang for no reason. As soon as he put down his phone, Su Qingsang came out. She had changed her clothes and seemed to have washed her face. The hair on her forehead was still a little wet. Every time she washed her face, her eyes would be covered with a layer of mist. She looked very charming. Hua Jinyao couldn't help but feel a little thirsty, but he knew it wasn't the right time. Why are you out? Did you order takeout? Not yet. The line is busy. Then let's go out to eat. Su Qingsang was still in a bad mood, but she wanted to go out for a walk. But don't you need to go to work? Will it delay your work if you come back like this? No. Hua Jinyao shook his head and said matter-of-factly, I just got a big order for my company, so the boss doesn't dare to make things difficult for me. I have a lot of free time now. If Hua Jinyao's assistant, Yang Wenchang, and his secretary, Zhang Yang, heard what Hua Jinyao said, they would probably vomit blood. Honey, it's good that you don't need to go to work. I happen to be free in the afternoon. I can accompany you. Su Qingsang looked at him. It would be a lie to say that she wasn't touched. She had always been alone. Even if she had a good friend like Shi Mengwan. But Shi Mengwan always had her own things and her own family. When she was with Wei Lenin, they could barely be considered together. Her relationship with Wei Lenin was average. They would only meet occasionally and eat out together. Since she got together with Hua Jinyao, she realized that when she had something on her mind, it felt much better to have someone to accompany her than to be alone. Especially when this man was on her side almost unconditionally. Honey. Hua Jinyao's face suddenly enlarged in front of her. Su Qingsang was startled and instinctively wanted to step back. Hua Jinyao reached out and wrapped his arms around her waist. He moved his face closer to hers. Staring at me like that, did you realize that your husband is the most handsome man in the universe? The little bit of emotion in Su Qingsang's heart disappeared without a trace because of his words. Raising her hand to push against his chest, she tried to put some distance between the two of them. I realize that you are invincible and thick-skinned in the universe. Hua Jinyao wasn't angry at all. Instead, he smiled and pulled her body closer to his. Honey, you finally admit that I'm the best in the world? Admit it? I admit that you are the most thick-skinned person in the world. Hua Jinyao kissed Su Qingsang's cheek. Honey, thank you for the compliment. Su Qingsang had lost her temper. She found that if she stayed with Hua Jinyao for a long time, her temper might become better and better. How could this person always be so frivolous? Li Qinshu signed a document and looked at the person in front of her. Her voice was very calm. How's it going? Everything has been done according to your instructions. The assistant in front of him stood there, not even daring to breathe loudly. Chapter 132. Li Qinshu really disliked Su Qingsang's existence, but as long as she didn't provoke her, she didn't mind living peacefully with him. If Su Qingsang couldn't see things clearly and kept thinking about things that didn't belong to her, then she could only ask Su Qingsang to stay away from the Su family. Otherwise, he would appear in front of her from time to time and cause her annoyance. Yes. The assistant nodded and quickly retreated. As soon as he left, Su Qinghui came in. Although Li Qinshu held the real power in the Li Corporation, Su Qinghui was the nominal president. This was also Li Qinshu's way of showing weakness and currying favor. She believed that she had done everything she could to help Su Qinghui. However, no matter how much she had done, Su Qinghui still didn't care about her. I think there's still a problem with the previous joint venture. Sure enough, he came to look for him only for official business and nothing else. Li Qinshu looked a little unhappy, but she quickly turned her attention to the document in his hand. After talking about business, she saw that Su Qinghui was in a hurry to leave. Li Qinshu stopped him. Anything else? Su Qinghui frowned. Obviously, he didn't want to spend even a minute with Li Qinshu. Li Qinshu gritted her teeth and thought of Su Qingsang. It was the child of the woman Su Qinghui loved the most. Su Qingsang seems to be in trouble recently. You, trouble? Su Qinghui frowned, but he soon calmed down. What kind of trouble? Little troublemaker. Li Qinshu stared at his face. Aren't you going to do something? What? Su Qinghui looked at her face. What do you want me to do? I thought you didn't like me caring about her? Li Qinshu felt like laughing. She stood up and walked around the table to Su Qinghui. I don't like it when you care about her. But you're just going to listen to me? I want you to love me. Why don't you? Su Qinghui avoided her hand and said expressionlessly, What are you trying to say? Li Qinshu's hand missed. She felt suffocated and withdrew her hand. Her voice was slightly cold. I don't want to say anything. I just wanted to tell you that Su Qingsang is in trouble. I'm done. I'm done. Li Qinshu nodded. Su Qinghui turned around and left without hesitation. She felt terrible and her heart was throbbing in pain. Su Qinghui, don't let me know that your indifference is just an excuse to protect her. If you don't do anything, I'll just ask Su Qingsang to leave Lin City. If you really dare to protect her, then I definitely won't let you off just like that. Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao had lunch together. It was already the beginning of autumn, but the weather was still warm. Hu Jinyao held Su Qingsang's hand and got into the car. I'm free this afternoon. Do you want to go look at the car with me? There's no need for that, right? Of course. Hu Jinyao didn't give her a chance to refuse. You also said that there are times when your time doesn't match up with mine. It would be more convenient to buy a car. Seeing his persistence, Su Qingsang didn't know what to say. Don't push yourself too hard. Cars can take their time. I can take the subway too. Honey, are you feeling sorry for me? Honey, I'm so touched. Hu Jinyao reached out and held her in his arms. Honey, you're the best. You're the best. Chapter 133. She didn't feel bad for him. She just felt that there was no need to force it. After all, hundreds of thousands was not a small amount. Seeing her expression, Hu Jinyao suddenly smiled and leaned over, giving her a big kiss on the cheek. All right, honey, I know you care about me. But don't worry, your husband will work hard. Hu Jinyao. What should she say? She really didn't feel bad for him. His chest is very bright, he always smiles when he talks. A warm chest and a warm smile. Su Qingsang stayed in his arms, unable to say anything. Honey, don't worry. Whether it is a car or a house, I will give it to you through my own efforts. Honey, I'll definitely let you live a good life. I'll give you what others have. Su Qingsang was stunned for a moment. She stared at Hu Jinyao's face, which was so close to hers, in a daze. She didn't care about material things, but she was touched by his thoughts. Her heart trembled slightly. She lowered her eyes and hid her thoughts. I'm fine. I don't care about that. But I want to give it to you. Hu Jinyao held her hand tightly. I want to give you the best. His focused expression made Su Qingsang's heart skip a beat again. Hu Jinyao leaned over and kissed her cheek again. Honey, do you realize that I'm even more handsome now? Su Qingsang put her hand on her forehead and suddenly realized that there was some miscommunication. Did you find that you've begun to fall in love with me? Hu Jinyao moved closer to her again. The look on his face made her speechless. Hurry up and drive. Su Qingsang couldn't take it anymore. All right. Let's go now. Hu Jinyao explained his plan. By the way, wife. After that, we can go to a movie. There are a lot of new movies coming out recently. I don't have to work anyway. Just treat it as a stroll. But, all right. Just consider it as accompanying me. As the car drove away, Su Qingsang looked out of the window at the passing street view, and the corners of her mouth suddenly turned up. Su Qingsang was willing to buy another car that cost about 100,000 yuan, but Hu Jinyao refused. Finally he picked a Cadillac. Hu Jinyao, I don't think it's appropriate for me to drive this car to the hospital. The chief's car wasn't as good as hers. What would people think if she drove such a car to work? This car's performance is better than the one you just picked. Don't try to save money for me. Don't worry, I said I'll work hard. Hu Jinyao didn't know what to say. It was just a car that cost a few 100,000. If it weren't for the fact that he didn't want to scare Su Qingsang, he wouldn't have bought such a cheap car for her. Su Qingsang looked at Hu Jinyao's profile and couldn't bring herself to say no. Why don't you drive this one? Anyway, you're someone who has to run business outside every day. With this car I'll look good too. Honey. Hu Jinyao squeezed her hand. I didn't even give you a betrothal gift when we got married. Don't think too much about it. Just take this car as a betrothal gift. After listening to him for a long time, Su Qingsang finally stopped struggling. After looking at the car, he said that he would pick it up the next day. Hu Jinyao took Su Qingsang to the movies. For the whole day, Su Qingsang was accompanied by Hu Jinyao. She didn't think about Zhang Mei, the farce in the hospital, or the news on Weibo. Therefore, she didn't know that Hu Jinyao had sent and received several messages while she was not looking. Chapter 134. Early the next morning, a well-known local blogger revealed the truth on Weibo, saying that he was an insider, and revealed the true story of the pregnant woman jumping off the building. Zhang Mei's husband's surname was Li. His name was Li Jiaxing. Li Jiaxing and Zhang Mei already had 2 daughters. I've always wanted a son. When Zhang Mei was pregnant, Li Jiaxing's mother, who was also Zhang Mei's mother-in-law, specially found a fortune teller to tell that it was a son. Although the Li family was unhappy about his fall, they thought that he was their grandson, so they let it go. Who knew that when Zhang Mei went for a routine checkup last night, her mother-in-law happened to come and overheard the conversation of 2 other patients in the same room. They said that judging from Zhang Mei's belly, it should be a girl. They were just chatting casually, but Zhang Mei's grandmother took it to heart. The more she looked at Zhang Mei's belly, the more it looked like she was carrying a girl. The next morning, the more Zhang Mei's grandmother thought about it, the more suspicious she became. She went to ask another doctor who had examined Zhang Mei yesterday. She took Zhang Mei's ultrasound report and asked if it was a boy or a girl. Of course, the doctor refused to say. He only said that the hospital had a rule not to reveal the gender of the fetus. However, the more the doctor behaved like this, the more Zhang Mei's grandmother believed him. After she believed that Zhang Mei was pregnant with a girl, she didn't like Zhang Mei anymore. Especially when he thought that Zhang Mei would have to stay in the hospital to keep the baby safe. Not only would she have to spend money, but she would also be giving birth to a daughter. After thinking about it, she discussed it with Li Jiaxing and decided to let Zhang Mei induce labor. Zhang Mei refused. She had been pregnant for nearly 7 months. She refused to induce the labor just like that. In the end, she had an impulse with Li Jiaxing and Mrs. Li Du's mother pushed Zhang Mei in excitement. Zhang Mei fell to the ground. All the patients in the ward at the time could testify, and they even took photos and a short video. Zhang Mei had already fallen yesterday and she fell again today. Of course the child couldn't be saved. When she heard that it was a girl, Li Du's mother felt that it was a good and wonderful abortion. She turned around and asked Zhang Mei to go back and have another baby. Zhang Mei was forced to jump off a building because she had lost her child and couldn't bear the pressure. She jumped off the building. Li Jiaxing's mother was dumbfounded. However, she felt indignant. Later, she was egged on by someone and decided to come to the hospital to make a scene. The long blog post not only had witnesses, but also photos as evidence. As soon as this article was published, the internet was in an uproar. The people who were scolding the hospital yesterday all turned around and scolded Li Jiaxing and Mrs. Li today. Especially when the video of Li Du's mother scolding Zhang Mei and asking her to induce labor was released, the public's opinion swung to one side. At the same time, photos of Li Jiaxing bringing people to the hospital to make trouble yesterday were also posted on the internet. Su Qingsang had been with Hu Jinyao the whole day yesterday. Naturally, he didn't know that the direction of the news had changed. That night, Hu Jinyao pestered her for most of the night. The guy used the excuse that she didn't have to go to work the next day and could rest at home to fully exercise his rights as a husband. When Su Qingsang woke up in the morning, her back was still sore and her legs felt weak. When she saw Hua Jinyao's satisfied expression, she couldn't help but bury her face in the quilt. "Honey." Hua Jinyao sat down on the bed, feeling refreshed. "You don't have to work today. Where do you want to go?" "I'm not going anywhere." Su Qingsang's voice was muffled by the blanket. Hua Jinyao reached out his hand to pull the quilt, but Su Qingsang held it down hard and didn't let him take it. Chapter 135. Su Qingsang poked her head out of the quilt and glared at him. How could she not be angry? She kept saying that she couldn't take it anymore and that she didn't want him to come again. But what did he do? "I'm sorry." Hua Jinyao held her tightly and put her on his lap. "I couldn't control myself yesterday." Su Qingsang didn't want to talk to him. How could that be called not controlling himself? He didn't control himself at all. She pouted, her face full of anger and her cheeks flushed red. She looked really cute. Hua Jinyao couldn't help but lean over and give her another heavy kiss on the lips. "Honey, don't worry. I'll control myself tonight." Who would believe him? Su Qingsang turned her face away. This person had no credibility with her. "But you can't blame me." Hua Jinyao looked at her shoulder under the quilt. "My wife is so beautiful and delicious. It's normal that I can't control myself. Right? Delicious? Did he think she was a food?" Su Qingsang wanted to bite him. "Honey, don't be angry." Hua Jinyao put his hand on the back of her waist. "How about I give you a massage?" "No." Su Qingsang finally opened her mouth. But even these two simple words were hoarse. It showed how outrageous this guy was yesterday. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but want to glare at him again. Hua Jinyao looked like he was begging for mercy. "Okay, don't be angry. Do you want me to let you hit me?" Su Qingsang ignored him. "Let me go. I want to sleep." "Honey." Hua Jinyao put his arms around her waist. "Think about it. The weather is so good and you don't go to work. Isn't it a waste for us to stay at home? Do you want to go out and play?" "No." "Go out and play? Where to play?" In her current state, she would be tired if she took 2 more steps. "Honey," Hua Jinyao wanted to persuade Su Qingsang, but her phone rang. Su Qingsang's hand was wrapped in the quilt. Hua Jinyao helped her take the phone. When he saw the name on the screen, he wanted to hang up. "Give it to me." Su Qingsang had already reached out her hand. Hua Jinyao didn't give her the phone. Instead, he put it on speaker after answering. Su Qingsang glared at him. She really didn't want to argue with him over such a trivial matter. "Qingsang." Zhuo Hongchen was on the other end of the line. Even through the phone, Su Qingsang could hear the concern in his voice. "Senior brother? Where are you now?" "I'm at home." Su Qingsang's voice was still a little hoarse. She cleared her throat and tried to take the phone. Hua Jinyao refused to give it to her and kept holding it. Su Qingsang could not help but roll her eyes at him. "Have you seen the news?" "What news?" "The hospital's news. It's about Zhang Mei." Zhuo Hongchen knew that the hospital was innocent, but he didn't expect it to be solved so quickly. "Zhang Mei." Su Qingsang wanted to take out her phone to see what was going on, but Zhuo Hongchen didn't give her time. "If you have time, you can look at it later. Come to the hospital now." "To the hospital? Now?" "Yes." "Hurry up, the hospital will be holding a press conference later. You still have to attend." "Press conference?" Su Qingsang hung up the phone. Ignoring Hua Jinyao's expression, she picked up her phone and began to search for news. When she finished reading all the scandals, news and Weibo articles, she was completely stunned. How was that possible? Such a bad thing was solved by a Weibo article. Chapter 136. What's wrong? Hua Jinyao took the phone from her hand. Hua Jinyao glanced at the news and nodded. Not bad. Yang Wenchang found someone rather quickly. This blog post was well written. He could consider giving Yang Wenchang a raise later. What's not bad? Su Qingsang looked up at him. I'm saying that this person's article is pretty good. Su Qingsang didn't have time to care about the article. She just felt that things were changing too fast and she couldn't keep up. I didn't expect Zhang Mei to commit suicide because of this. It seemed that when she examined Zhang Mei a few days ago, Zhang Mei deliberately concealed the true wood eye. He didn't mention that this was his third child. Hua Jinyao wrapped his arms around her and pulled her into his arms. She struggled but failed to break free. She could not help but glare at him again. Let me go. I need to get up. Didn't you say that you can't get up? Hua Jinyao didn't let him go. If you can't get up, you can rest at home. Didn't you hear? There was going to be a press conference. I'm going. Where are you going? Hu Jiniao kissed her on the cheek. I'm going to suspend you and send you home before you find out what happened. Now that we have proof, we're letting you go back to work? You're too soft and easy to talk to. What are you talking about? Su Qingsang turned her face away and broke free from his hand. Stop it. That's true. Hu Jiniao held her hand. If I were you, I would stay at home. No matter what, you should at least let your hospital's president or vice president do it. Yes, it would be best if the leader of the health bureau came over to apologize to you. Explain how they wronged you, and then you can consider whether or not you want to go back. Are you crazy? Who did he think he was? I'm just a little doctor. What's more, it's normal for the hospital to handle it that way. How is it normal? You're not normal at all. Seeing that she was about to jump out of bed, Hu Jiniao hurriedly pulled her back. Why don't you think about it? You will come at my beck and call and go at my beck and call. How could there be such a cheap thing? I won't let you go anyway. Hu Jiniao, stop it. Su Qingsang pulled her hand back. She rolled her eyes at him. She really couldn't figure it out. This person didn't look stupid. Why do you always do stupid things and say stupid things? I told you this is normal. Now that it was clarified, it was a good thing for everyone. Do you really want me to throw a tantrum? Why can't I just throw a tantrum? Hu Jiniao looked at her as if she was an idiot. You have the right to do so. Just dump it. I won't go. Call your dean and tell him that I won't go back to work unless he personally asks me to. Su Qingsang couldn't be bothered to argue with him. If she really argued with this person, she would definitely be angered to death. When he got off the bed, he found that his limbs were really weak and even standing up was a little difficult. She was about to fall to the ground, but fortunately Hu Jiniao held her waist. Take a look. You can't even stand up and you still want to go to the hospital? I say rest at home, I bet. When the time comes, your dean will definitely come to invite you. I don't believe you. She would have to be crazy to believe Hu Jiniao's words. The headmaster won't come to invite me. They'll only fire me. How dare he? Meeting Su Qingsang's confused gaze, Hu Jiniao realized that he had gone overboard. He smiled awkwardly. Chapter 137. Su Qingsang looked at the indignation in his eyes and felt a familiar sense of incongruity. Hu Jiniao, did you do something? What did I do? I didn't do anything. Hu Jiniao walked behind her and put his arms around her waist. Honey, I really feel sorry for you. Really. Look at my sincere eyes. He raised 3 fingers as he spoke, but this person had always been frivolous. Even though he was acting like this now, in Su Qingsang's heart, this person was still frivolous. Yes, you feel sorry for me. You're very sincere. Honey. Hu Jiniao was dissatisfied. He stepped forward and shook Su Qingsang's hand. I'm already like this. How can you still treat me like this? How could she treat him like this? Su Qingsang's lips moved. When she saw Hu Jiniao's childlike aggrieved expression, she sighed softly. She tiptoed and leaned over to kiss him on the cheek. Okay. Stop talking. I'm not aggrieved. Thank you for feeling sorry for me. Is that okay? She really wasn't aggrieved. With him standing in her shoes, she felt as if she didn't have any grievances at all. Hu Jiniao was satisfied and hugged Su Qingsang for a while. If you want to go, I won't object. But don't be too aggrieved. If they dare to make you angry, you don't have to do it. It just so happens that we're taking time off for our honeymoon. Stop it. What did he think the hospital was? He had already investigated everything. How could he let her be aggrieved? Do you want me to send you? No. Su Qingsang thought of something else. Didn't you say you're picking up the car today? Then don't send me. Just go pick up the car and finish the formalities. I promise to complete the task. Hu Jiniao saluted. Su Qingsang wanted to laugh again when she saw him like this. How could someone be like this? Such a big man living like a clown, really? After the news came out on Weibo this morning, the public opinion was one-sided. There were hundreds of thousands of shares and tens of millions of views. Under such circumstances, the hospital didn't need to be held responsible. However, the hospital still planned to hold a press conference to explain the situation clearly. Among them were the doctors who received the patient and the nurses who took care of the pregnant woman. There were also a group of people waiting. The reporters' questions basically revolved around whether the Chinese traditional medical hospital had dereliction of duty during the operation process. The hospital, which had all the necessary procedures and signatures, had produced sufficient evidence to prove the hospital's innocence. Finally, he pulled up the surveillance footage from the corridor. Although the video didn't show the conflict between Mrs. Li and Zhang Mei, they could still see Mrs. Li's expression and demeanor when she walked out of the ward. Coupled with the video prepared by the patient in the ward, the information provided in this video was more detailed than before. In the end, it could be proven that Zhang Mei's suicide was an accident. There was no operational error on the part of the hospital, and Zhang Mei's suicide had nothing to do with the hospital. Furthermore, Li Jiaxing's group of people had caused a ruckus in the hospital yesterday, causing an extremely bad influence. The hospital reserved the right to sue Li Jiaxing and his group. However, he also considered the actual situation. The other party had lost their loved ones and acted irrationally out of grief, so he forgave them. In other words, if the other party continued to cause trouble, the hospital would pursue the other party's responsibility. But if the other party didn't make a fuss, then he would let it go. The farce ended just like that. Chapter 138. Since it had nothing to do with the hospital, Su Qingsang's job was saved. The hospital agreed to let her rest at home for 2 days before coming back to work. Su Qingsang was very happy to have 2 more days off, but she was even happier that her innocence had been proven. Congratulations. Zhua Hongchen had been waiting outside, waiting for the press conference to end. He congratulated Su Qingsang as soon as he saw her. Thank you, Senior. Su Qingsang was also very happy. Thank you for helping me yesterday. How about I treat you to a meal today? We can't just treat Dr. Zhua to a meal. Qin Xiaoyu also came over to join in the fun. We should also have a share, right? That's right. Head nurse Shen Pinglan also said, everything's fine now. No matter what, they had to have a meal together. Let's celebrate. Deputy Director Yang from the hospital's administrative office walked out at the same time. He clapped his hands and said, this is fine. How about this? You guys have worked hard these past 2 days. I'll book a table for everyone to celebrate. That's great. Long live Director Yang. Su Qingsang looked at the group of relaxed colleagues and her face also relaxed. Zhua Hongchen, on the other hand, had changed from a 2-person dinner to a group of people. Disappointment flashed across his eyes, but Su Qingsang didn't notice it at all. Li Qianshua's fingers unconsciously tapped on the table, and the assistant in front of her didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Even though Li Qianxue was a woman, the prestige she had accumulated over the years was not to be underestimated. You didn't put pressure on the hospital? Yes. The assistant also looked embarrassed. But someone is helping behind the scenes. Moreover, the public opinion was now in the hospital's favor. Some people even said that Dr. Su was wronged on the internet. It's not a good time to act now. Li Qianshua's eyes turned cold. Who's helping them? Could it be Su Qinghui? It was Hu Jinyao. The assistant's face darkened. President Li Hu Jinyao didn't hide anything. He clearly revealed his actions. Hu Jinyao? Li Qianxue narrowed her eyes. And then? When we were investigating this matter, he even sent someone to bring you a message. What is it? He said that for the sake of the Su family and the Li family, he would let this matter go. If he finds out what you did to Dr. Su again, he won't be polite. The calmness on Li Qianshua's face was almost unbearable. How dare that person? Is he really from the Hua family of Rong City? Yes. The assistant was also very surprised. The son of Hua Mingguang from the Hua family in Rong City. We don't know why he came to Lin City, but he's very determined to protect Dr. Su. As the assistant spoke, he carefully observed Li Qianshua's expression, as if waiting for her to make the next decision. Li Qianxue was silent. Last time, she knew that the man Su Qingsang found was not ordinary. He didn't expect them to be from the Hua family. Can you find out why he married Su Qingsang? I can't find anything. The assistant lowered his head even more. This subordinate is incompetent. There was another silence. Li Qianxue rubbed the space between her eyebrows and said, forget it. GM Li? Let's just forget about it. We don't need to do anything for now. Yes. You've worked hard. Let's go. After the assistant left, Li Qianxue turned her chair and looked out the window. Su Qinghui really didn't help Su Qingsang? He had said how much he loved that woman, but it turned out that she was nothing more than this. A gentle and pitiful face seemed to appear in his mind. Chapter 139. However, Su Qinghui's inaction was a relief to Li Qianxue. As long as Su Qinghui didn't care about Su Qingsang, he could ignore her existence, ignore her, and treat her as his daughter. She was too lazy to deal with an illegitimate daughter. It was just a pity for that woman. Back then she had loved Su Qinghui to death. She had thought that Su Qinghui was affectionate. It was ridiculous. If one day she knew that her daughter was living like this, who knew what she would be like? She was really looking forward to it. President Hua. Yang Wenchang put the car key in front of Hua Jinyao. The cars have all been modified. They've all been tested. Yeah. Hua Jinyao nodded and gestured for him to put down the car key. How's the bidding going? It's going well. It's just that Shenkai came to visit twice and I told him you weren't there. Look, I won't see you. Since they dared to plot against him, they had to pay the price. If it weren't for Li Junxing, Hua Jinyao wouldn't have let it go so easily. Okay, then I'll go and reject it. There's one more thing. What? I've already sent the message to Li Qianxue. The Li family doesn't seem to be making any further moves. I'm not afraid. He would naturally protect his woman. If the Li family had any brains, they would know not to fight him head-on. How's the hospital? Is everything settled? It's all taken care of. The hospital even gave Dr. Su 2 days off. As soon as Yang Wenchang finished speaking, Hua Jinyao's hand that was holding the document paused. 2 days off? Although it was a little less, it was enough. President Hua. Yang Wenchang suddenly had a bad feeling. Sure enough, Hua Jinyao looked up at him and said, "Cancel my schedule for tomorrow and the day after." President Hua. Yang Wenchang was about to cry. There are still 3 cooperation projects and 1 merger. The investment you mentioned last time, looking into Hua Jinyao's eyes, which were getting colder and colder, Yang Wenchang felt sweat dripping down his back. Yes, I'll arrange it. What a tough life. Could he ask for a raise? Hua Jinyao didn't hear Yang Wenchang's thoughts. Even if he did, he wouldn't care. He excitedly drove to Su Qingsang in a car that had been modified. Both the speed and the safety factor of the car had been increased by more than a little. Little did he know that she was not in the hospital but had gone to dinner with the group of people in the hospital. When Su Qingsang received Hua Jinyao's call, they had already sat down in the private room. This time, the hospital was able to turn the tables and protect its reputation. The hospital administration was very generous and directly booked a large private room in Lin Yuan Pavilion. When Su Qingsang saw Hua Jinyao's number, she greeted Deputy Director Yang and Qin Xiaoyu, then stood up and went outside to answer the call. "Honey, where are you?" Hearing the familiar tone, Su Qingsang could almost imagine the look on Hua Jinyao's face at the moment. At the Lin Yuan Pavilion. "Can I come and pick you up?" "Stop it." Su Qingsang was about to lose to him. "It's just a gathering of colleagues. Besides, I drove here. But I've already brought the new car back today. I wanted to let you try it. We can try again tomorrow." Su Qingsang stood at the end of the corridor with her back to the private room and said in a low voice, "We don't have to rush things like this, do we? Then how long do you need? I'll come and pick you up when I'm done." "No need." Su Qingsang really wasn't the kind of person who liked to stick with her boyfriend. "I'll drive back myself." Chapter 140. On the other end of the phone, Hua Jinyao was still worried. "Then you can't drink. After all, you have to drive." Okay. She didn't like to drink anyway. The approaching figure had already walked behind her. Su Qingsang happened to turn half a circle at that moment and changed her hand to answer the phone, so she didn't see him. "Don't sit with men either. All the gynecologists in your department are women, right?" Hua Jinyao. Did he stutter? Su Qingsang was speechless. "Do you think you have to get a rope and tie it to me so that you can feel more at ease? That's not bad." Hua Jinyao seemed to be seriously considering the feasibility of this suggestion. "I'll get a long belt and tie you to me. I'll take you wherever I go." Hua Jinyao. Su Qingsang couldn't listen to it anymore. "Are you too free?" "I'm very free." Even though she couldn't see Hua Jinyao's face, Su Qingsang could hear his grievance from his voice. "Think about it. I specially mentioned picking you up because I wanted to have a romantic night with you." "All right." Su Qingsang's voice lowered. She also realized that Hua Jinyao seemed to be unable to be angry with her. "Stop it. I don't go to work tomorrow. I'll accompany you tomorrow, okay?" "That's what you said." Su Qingsang felt that something was wrong, but she had already agreed, so she could only nod. Yes, I promise. Can you let me hang up now?" "Okay." Hua Jinyao nodded. Su Qingsang thought that he was going to hang up, but he stopped her again. "Wait a minute. Did you forget something?" "What?" "You haven't kissed me today." Su Qingsang blushed again. "Stop it. I'm not. Kiss me and I'll hang up. Otherwise, I don't mind saying more sweet things." Su Qingsang had no choice but to make a kiss sound into the phone. Hua Jinyao was satisfied. He also kissed the phone. Honey, I'll wait for you to come back. You haven't finished wearing the pajamas I gave you. Those pajamas? Su Qingsang only felt that her face was very hot. She hung up the phone without thinking, but the heat on her face did not subside at all. What was going on in Hu Jinyao's head? Su Qingsang turned around and was startled by the figure that suddenly appeared in front of her. She took a big step back. Su Qingsang took a few deep breaths and calmed herself down. She smiled at the man in front of her and nodded slightly. Brother-in-law. Qiu Yanba didn't respond. He looked Su Qingsang up and down. It was natural that Su Qingsang was good-looking. Back in the Su family, no one had ever paid attention to Su Qingsang. As an illegitimate daughter, she was not liked or liked by others. Under the intentional indifference of Li Qianxue and Su Qinghui, Su Qingsang deliberately restrained herself. She was a person with almost no sense of existence in the Su family. However, the Su Qingsang who was on the phone just now was completely different from what he remembered. Her eyes were curved and her lips were curved into a smile. Even if he wasn't looking at her from below, he could still see the gentleness and shyness in her eyes. Qiu Yanba had also come out to answer the phone. However, after seeing Su Qingsang, he hung up the phone and just stood behind her. Su Qingsang felt very uncomfortable under his gaze. She took a step back and smiled at him. Brother-in-law, if there's nothing else, I'll go over first. She didn't say where she was going and she didn't think it was necessary to make it clear. Chapter 141. Su Qingsang was stunned and looked up at Qiu Yanba. Brother-in-law? I'm not married to your sister yet. Qiu Yanba suddenly said this sentence. Su Qingsang was stunned for a moment. And then? I'm not your brother-in-law yet. His words surprised Su Qingsang even more. She frowned. She didn't understand what Qiu Yanba meant. However, alright, I got it. Anything else? Was that Hu Jinyao? Su Qingsang frowned even harder. Does it have anything to do with you? Qiu Yanba looked at the guarded look in Su Qingsang's eyes, which were completely different from when he was facing Hu Jinyao. He couldn't help but purse his lips into a straight line. It has something to do with me. The Hua family had come to Lin City to expand their territory. Hu Jinyao was the most influential member of the third generation of the Hua family. He was also recognized as the most capable member of the Hua family. This time, the Chou family and the Hua family even had business cooperation. Both parties were almost done talking, but he hadn't had the chance to see Hu Jinyao yet. In fact, he was also beginning to wonder if Su Qingsang knew about Hu Jinyao's true identity. Hu Jinyao has a cooperation project with our company. Su Qingsang didn't know much about business. She looked at Qiu Yanba and waited for him to finish. This cooperation project is worth more than $1 billion. The profits generated every year are not to be underestimated. Even our enemies don't have the ability to take them all in one go. Every company would only have a certain amount of cash flow. To get such a big cooperation, one must have the capability. What are you trying to say? Showing off how much money they made this time? I want to say, for Hu Jinyao's company to be able to do such a high level of cooperation, it was all thanks to him. Aren't you curious about Hu Jinyao's identity? The first thing that came to her mind was the scene where Hu Jinyao said that he would buy her a car. His money seemed to come easily. She knew from the beginning that Hu Jinyao didn't look like a person who would worry about money. And him. Sensing that Qiu Yanba was still looking at her, she put away the puzzled expression on her face and looked calm. I'm not curious. You already told me. This time it was Qiu Yanba's turn to be stunned. He looked at Su Qingsang as if trying to figure out if she was telling the truth. He really told you everything? Is there a problem? Su Qingsang didn't like Qiu Yanba's attitude. She didn't want to stay with this future brother-in-law. She turned to leave, but Qiu Yanba stood in front of her and blocked her way. You seem to be very afraid of me? Why should I be afraid of you? Every time you see me, you look like you can't wait to escape. You're wrong. That's not fear. Su Qingsang corrected herself. I just don't want people to misunderstand. Brother-in-law, don't forget. You are the one who is going to marry my sister. Qiu Yanbo raised his eyebrows and looked at the side of Su Qingsang, which was completely different from usual, with a flash of interest in his eyes. Yes. If you don't want me to misunderstand, what if I don't want to marry your sister? Su Qingsang was a little scared for a moment, but he took a step forward and said, If I don't want to marry your sister, what will you do? That's your business. Su Qingsang had never liked to get involved in the affairs of the other members of the Su family. It has nothing to do with me. Then what if I wanted to have something to do with you? Su Qingsang looked at Qiu Yanba's suddenly enlarged face and was slightly stunned. Brother-in-law, you must be joking. What's between you and my sister have nothing to do with me. Besides, brother-in-law, don't forget that I am married now. She was married. She had a husband. She was no longer the illegitimate daughter who had no one to rely on. Chapter 142. I have something to do. Excuse me. She didn't want to face Qiu Yanba again. Su Qingsang bowed, turned around and went back to her private room. Qiu Yanba narrowed his eyes and seemed to want to catch up with her, but he stopped when he saw someone coming out of another private room. What took you so long? Su Qingsang was teased as soon as she entered the room. It must be my dear husband calling. Fiske. Newlyweds are so lovey-dovey. They see each other every day but they're still so clingy. That's right. Looking at these young people were so envious. Su Qingsang blushed and felt very uncomfortable looking at these people. Zhuo Hongchen looked at the redness on her face and felt a suffocating pain in his heart. He was the one who met her first. He was the one who liked her first. But he was a step too late. How could he not be angry? Su Qingsang didn't know what was going on. However, the bystanders could see that Zhuo Hongchen was drinking cup after cup of wine non-stop. In the end, the doctors and nurses were still sober because they didn't drink much. Zhuo Hongchen and Deputy Director Yang were the first to get drunk. Su Qingsang wanted to suggest sending Zhuo Hongchen home, but it wasn't on the way, so another colleague sent him. She sent the other two nurses home on the way. When she got home, Hu Jinyao was already back. Not only was he back, but he had also taken a shower and was sitting on the bed playing games on his phone. Honey, you're back. Hu Jinyao threw his phone aside, got out of bed, walked over and hugged Su Qingsang. Did you drink? Why do you smell like alcohol? No. Someone else drank it and the smell got on me. Really? Hu Jinyao leaned over and sniffed her mouth. You smell alcohol and you said you didn't drink. I really didn't drink. Su Qingsang also smelled the smell on her body. Let go of me, I'm going to take a shower. Hu Jinyao stared at her little face and suddenly leaned over to kiss her. I want to shower too. Didn't you already shower? It's okay, I can shower again. As he spoke, Hu Jinyao picked Su Qingsang up. Su Qingsang was shocked. Put me down. No, I said I want to bathe together, so I will bathe together. Honey, we haven't showered together yet. Hu Jinyao. Su Qingsang's protest was silenced by his kiss. He carried her into the bathroom. What happened next was not as simple as a shower. Su Qingsang wanted to resist, but how could she defeat Hu Jinyao? In the end, they could only let him do whatever he wanted. As a result, when Su Qingsang came out of the bathroom, her limbs were weak. It had been a tiring day. As soon as her head touched the pillow, she felt extremely sleepy. Just as she was about to go back to sleep, Hu Jinyao's hand reached out to her again. Su Qingsang couldn't stand it and slapped his hand away. Hu Jinyao, give me something similar. Honey. Hu Jinyao turned over and restrained her hand. I can't help it. It's more or less the same. Anyway, you don't have to work tomorrow. Isn't it great? She didn't go to work, but she didn't want to spend all her time in bed, okay? His phone suddenly rang. Hu Jinyao paused. He didn't want to answer it. But it didn't stop ringing. Su Qingsang took this opportunity to turn over from his arms and escape. Aren't you going to answer the phone? Hu Jinyao took the phone. The number displayed on the screen made his expression change slightly, but only for a moment. He kissed Su Qingsang on the cheek, then walked out with his phone in his hand. Su Qingsang was so sleepy that she was about to fall asleep. Looking at Hu Jinyao's appearance, she suddenly woke up. Chapter 143. How many times has it been? Hu Jinyao seemed to avoid her every time he called her. What? Everyone has their own secrets. She understood. But they were husband and wife now, right? Qiu Yanba's words flashed through his mind. The identity of Hu Jinyao? What identity? Su Qingsang couldn't sit still anymore. She got up, put on some clothes and went to find Hu Jinyao. Hu Jinyao was standing on the balcony. After a night of fooling around with Su Qingsang, it was getting late. He listened to the news on the other side of the phone with a mocking look on his face. Let him go. I don't have much free time recently. Don't worry, let him be happy for a while. Rising up to the clouds and then falling down, that's more interesting. In the darkness of the night, Hu Jinyao's face showed a flash of ruthlessness. When Su Qingsang came out, she saw the emotions in his eyes. She froze for a moment and stopped in her tracks. Hearing the voice behind him, Hu Jinyao quickly turned around. In less than half a second, the expression on his face changed. Why did you come out? Are you tired? Why aren't you sleeping? Su Qingsang moved her lips and looked up at Hu Jinyao. So late. Who was that? A colleague from the company. What colleague? What kind of colleague would make him speak with such a tone and expression? You don't know him. He reached out and pulled her into his arms, trying to change the topic. Aren't you tired? I thought you couldn't even get out of bed. Hu Jinyao. Su Qingsang didn't care what Hu Jinyao's real identity was, but she didn't like the feeling of being kept a secret. Honey. Hu Jinyao picked her up and said, it seems that I didn't try hard enough. You actually still have the strength to get off the bed. This is definitely my mistake. Hu Jinyao. Su Qingsang struggled. Don't do this. I have something serious to tell you. I also have business with you. Hu Jinyao carried her back to the room. Honey, you don't look tired. Shall we continue? I'm tired. How could Su Qingsang let him do whatever he wanted? I'm going to bed. It's okay. I want to sleep too. We'll sleep together. Hu Jinyao. Su Qingsang tried to stand up, but Hu Jinyao pressed her down again. All right, wife. Look, a good night is hard to come by. Why don't we continue? Su Qingsang was no match for Hu Jinyao. Soon, not only would she not be able to find out Hu Jinyao's identity, but she would also be devoured. Su Qingsang sat in the car and looked out of the window. There was a hint of anger on her beautiful face. She ignored Hu Jinyao, who moved closer to her from time to time. Wife. Su Qingsang pretended not to hear him. Honey, Hu Jinyao called her again. My dear wife, I know I was wrong. Don't be angry. Shut up. After saying 2 words, Su Qingsang's voice became hoarse. She became angrier and didn't want to talk to Hu Jinyao. Wife, if you don't shut up, I'll get out of the car. Hu Jinyao didn't dare to speak again. He looked at Su Qingsang with a wronged expression. Seeing him act like this again, Su Qingsang was furious. But now she was too lazy to even reprimand him. It was one thing for this guy to run amok the night before yesterday. He was supposed to be resting yesterday, so he said that he would go out to play. What was the result? They didn't go anywhere for the whole day. They spent the whole day in bed. If she hadn't fainted last night, this guy probably wouldn't have stopped. Chapter 144. Hu Jinyao stopped the car in front of the restaurant and turned to look at Su Qingsang. Here we are. Su Qingsang glared at him and had no intention of getting out of the car. Her waist was still sore and her legs were weak. It was all this guy's fault. I said we'll eat at home. If you insist on coming out, I don't even have the strength to walk. Su Qingsang's voice was still hoarse and uncomfortable. She wasn't complaining, but she was uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. Let me hug you. Hu Jinyao reached out his hands as he spoke. How could Su Qingsang let him hug her? Isn't it enough for you to mess around at home? She even wanted to embarrass her in public. Hu Jinyao, that's enough. Honey. Hu Jinyao's voice was full of grievance. Don't be angry. Seeing that Su Qingsang still had a straight face, he couldn't help but move closer to her. Think about it, I've been a bachelor for 30 years. Now that I've started eating, you have to let me eat my fill, right? Su Qingsang was about to be defeated by his shamelessness. Hu Jinyao, you're still talking about it? Really? Hu Jinyao kissed Su Qingsang on the cheek. Besides, my wife is so beautiful, so gentle, so generous, has a good figure, good skin, and so passionate, and… Hu Jinyao, shut up. Su Qingsang's neck was red. She really couldn't listen to him anymore. Stop talking. Why don't you let me say it? Hu Jinyao blinked his starry eyes and said, my wife has always been very passionate and… He whispered the last few words into Su Qingsang's ear. Su Qingsang was embarrassed. That's enough. So you see, honey, you really can't blame me. You can only blame yourself for being too perfect. So how could I possibly endure it? Looking at his rascally face and his string of sweet nothings, Su Qingsang couldn't get angry no matter how angry she was. But she had to teach him a lesson. There's no next time. I will try my best. It was impossible not to have a next time. However, he said, honey, the most I can promise you is that I will control myself in the future. You can only do it once a day in the future. It was better to make a promise first. Su Qingsang realized that she had indulged Hu Jinyao too much. Really? Hu Jinyao's face suddenly changed. Honey, you won't be so cruel to me, will you? How about once a week? Hu Jinyao's face fell completely. Honey, I really know I was wrong. You don't have to punish me, do you? If you say it again, it will be once a month. Su Qingsang looked as if there was no room for negotiation. Hu Jingyao looked as if he had nothing left to live for. Honey, I've been wrong for the past 2 days. I promise I will be more careful next time, but this punishment is really too heavy. You can't do this or someone will die. Is that so? I can't tell. Su Qingsang opened the door and got out of the car. Although she was still a little uncomfortable, she was in a much better mood. Wife? Hu Jingyao was still following behind Su Qingsang, trying hard to persuade her. Su Qingsang pretended not to hear him. Listening to Hu Jingyao's nonsense and sweet nothings from time to time, the smile on her lips grew wider. Qiu Yanba, who had just parked the car and got out of the car in the distance, saw Su Qingsang's expression from afar. It was the complete opposite of the sharpness and alienation she showed in front of him. Su Qingsang, who was standing in front of him, looked like a little woman who was spoiled and loved by everyone. Chapter 145. At the other end of the car, Su Peizhen got out. She didn't see Su Qingsang. Seeing Qiu Yanba standing there in a daze, she followed his gaze to the entrance. What's wrong? Nothing. Qiu Yanba retracted his gaze. Why did you come to Chaoan Courtyard for dinner today? I heard that they just changed a chef. It's the former imperial chef's successor. Su Peizhen hooked her hand around Qiu Yanba's arm. Qiu Yanba looked at her soft hand on his arm and didn't pull his hand away. The two of them entered Chaoan Courtyard. The dining areas were all independent small courtyards. Once you entered the door, you wouldn't know who was here unless you had the intention to ask around. By the way, I heard that your company has a big cooperation project to discuss recently? How is it? Almost. Qiu Yanba thought of Hu Jingyao and what he saw just now. His brows furrowed slightly. Su Peizhen didn't see it. The two of them walked in and found the private room they usually booked and sat down. After ordering the dishes, they talked about some business matters. The Qiu and Li families had always cooperated. In the past few years, the businesses of both sides had been growing. After Su Peizhen finished speaking, she suddenly changed the topic. Yanba, last time my mother asked me to ask you, when are we going to have our wedding? Qiu Yanba paused in the act of pouring tea for her. He looked up at Su Peizhen and smiled slightly. What? You're starting to hate getting married too? Can't I? Su Peizhen's beautiful face was a little arrogant. We've been engaged for so long. Don't you want to get married earlier? A wedding is just a formality. Qiu Yanbo retracted his hand and poured tea into his cup. He picked it up and took a sip, a faint smile on his face. We're not that different from getting married now. Of course there's a difference, Su Peizhen said coquettishly. Su Qingsang is already married and I'm older than her. It's just a few days older. Qiu Yanba looked down and thought of Su Qingsang's smiling face when she was with Hu Jinyao. He actually felt his throat tighten. Not to mention that you don't like to be compared to her. Why are you talking about her again? I don't want to be compared to her. In her heart, Su Qingsang wasn't worthy of being mentioned in the same breath as her. However, he said, I'm just a little upset. Last time, when he told Li Qianxue about Su Yusin, he wanted Li Qianxue to deal with Su Qingsang. He didn't expect Su Qingsang to have someone protecting her. She didn't know what was wrong with that Hu Jinyao. He was bewildered by Su Qingsang. Li Qianxue also told her that she had failed this time. As long as Su Qingsang wasn't a threat to the Su family, they didn't need to pay attention to her. Since Li Qianxue had said so, Su Peizhen naturally wouldn't argue with an illegitimate daughter. What's wrong? Qiu Yanba pretended to ask casually. Did her marriage offend you too? Yes. You've provoked me. Su Peizhen didn't mind showing her spoiled side in front of Qiu Yanba. You should know who the man she married is. I just don't understand. How could a family like the Hua family in Rong City allow their eldest grandson to marry an illegitimate daughter? Qiu Yanba had heard Su Peizhen talk about Su Qingsang in such a tone, but this was the first time he felt uncomfortable. Su Qingsang has her merits too. At least along the way he really felt that Su Qingsang had some merits that these rich girls didn't have. Chapter 146. Su Peizhen's expression changed immediately. Qiu Yanba shrugged. Sort of. I just don't think she offended you. Her existence pissed me off. Su Peizhen stood up abruptly and glared at Qiu Yanba unhappily. What? What do you mean? Do you think she's better now? You're actually starting to pity her? What are you talking about? Qiu Yanba took her hand and asked her to sit down across from him. Why should I pity her? Pity really wasn't the word. It was just that at that time she had looked back and smiled faintly. Qiu Yanba couldn't forget the look of affection in her eyes. Su Peizhen was upset. Yanba, I don't care about other things. You know that. But Su Qingsang is someone I hate. You should know that, right? He was her fiancé. If he stood on Su Qingsang's side, she wouldn't let it go. Look at you. What nonsense are you talking about? Qiu Yanba placed the tea in front of her. Don't worry. She's my fiancé. But you. This was a marriage arranged by the Qiu family and the Li family. He knew it and so did she. Su Peijian was still in low spirits. No one liked an illegitimate daughter and she was no exception. Yanba, pick a time. Let's take our wedding photos and set the wedding date. Okay. Qiu Yanba nodded. I'll tell your parents when the time comes and see what day is suitable. Su Peijian's mood finally calmed down because of his affirmative attitude. The waiter began to serve the dishes. Qiu Yanba changed the topic as if the argument just now didn't exist. Only Qiu Yanba knew that Su Qingsang's appearance surfaced in his mind from time to time. He couldn't forget it. Su Qingsang had no idea that she almost became the source of the argument between Su Peijian and Qiu Yanba. She was enjoying Hu Jinyao's service in another private room. Here, try this fish. As Hu Jinyao spoke, he put a piece of fish with the bones removed into Su Qingsang's bowl. I remember you tasted a few more bites when you ate this fish last time. You should like it, right? Su Qingsang's hand, which was holding the chopsticks, paused slightly. She looked up at Hu Jinyao with a complicated look in her eyes. She was not particular about food, but Hu Jinyao was very meticulous. If she had moved her chopsticks more than once on a dish, he would definitely remember it. Not only would he remember, but he would also order according to her preferences next time. Just like this steamed turbot. She had only picked a few more times when they went out to eat and he already remembered it. Hurry up and eat. It won't taste good when it's cold. As Hu Jinyao spoke, he didn't forget to ladle a bowl of soup for her. He just changed a chef here. It's said that his ancestor used to be an imperial chef. This dish was eaten by the emperors in the palace. How can you believe a gimmick created by the Shang family? Su Qingsang smiled, but she still ate a few more mouthfuls of food. Hu Jinyao, on the other hand, eagerly removed the bones from the fish for her. Su Qingsang looked at his focused movements, and the anger she felt from being bullied by him yesterday and the day before dissipated. All right, no more thorns. Hu Jinyao put the fish in Su Qingsang's bowl and looked up to find that she had been staring at him. What happened? Chapter 147. Hu Jinyao froze for a moment and suddenly laughed. What are you talking about, honey? You're my wife. Who should I be nice to if not you? Was that all? Would he be so nice to that woman if she wasn't his wife? Su Qingsang couldn't help but think. Her eyes darkened. Hu Jinyao held her hand. What's wrong, honey? Aren't you happy that I'm nice to you? No. Su Qingsang didn't know what to say. Hu Jinyao, I just think. Don't worry, honey. I'll be nicer to you in the future. As he spoke, he leaned over and kissed her on the face again. Su Qingsang was used to him doing this all the time. You kissed me on the face. Really? It's okay. My wife has good skin. Just take it as hydration. Su Qingsang didn't want to talk anymore. She felt that the two of them weren't on the same point at all. I mean, you don't have to do this. What do you mean? It's... Su Qingsang wanted to say that she still needed time to get used to him kissing her from time to time. Get used to him always being nice to her, get used to him always bullying her. Hu Jinyao, you really don't have to do this. I'm an adult. I can take care of myself. I know. Hu Jinyao nodded heavily. I know you're an adult, but you're also my wife. Then why did you marry me? Su Qingsang had always wanted to know about this. I was the one who proposed the marriage. I know, but why did you agree? Why do you think? I don't know. My wife is beautiful. Hu Jinyao put on a flirtatious look. I fell in love with you at first sight. No one else but you. Nonsense again. It wasn't like she didn't look in the mirror. How could she not know what she looked like? I'm telling the truth. Hu Jinyao leaned over and said, Honey, you're the most beautiful in my heart. You're like a fairy. No, even a fairy isn't as beautiful as you. The more he said, the more ridiculous it was. Su Qingsang didn't ask any more. Let's eat. Don't be so touchy all the time. She pulled his hand away. She really couldn't stand the way he acted all the time. Yes. Hu Jinyao sat back down. But not long after he came over again. Honey, eat this. It's delicious. Su Qingsang completely lost her temper. She found that no matter what she did, it was like hitting a ball of cotton when she fought against Hu Jinyao. Forget it. She really couldn't be bothered to argue with him. Su Qingsang had rested for 2 days, but it was as if she hadn't rested at all. That night, however, she strictly forbade Hu Jinyao from messing around, so she had a good sleep. He hurried to the hospital. The latest news was that Zhang Mei's family had come to the hospital to take care of Zhang Mei's funeral. After this incident, Su Qingsang's reputation soared. There were even people who came to see her for treatment. For a time, Su Qingsang received twice as many patients as before. After a whole morning, he was extremely tired. During lunch, the two directors, Zhang Qiubai and Qin Xiaoyu, laughed at him. However, in the afternoon, the people in the department couldn't laugh anymore. Every year after the Mid-Autumn Festival, the hospital would organize a medical team to go to the countryside. It was a key project of the hospital. This year, Su Qingsang's name was also on the list of names nominated by the medical team. Su Qingsang, who had received the news, looked at the hospital leaders and was stunned for a moment. Chapter 148. Yes. Deputy Director Li, who was in charge of the daily work, smiled kindly. This time we will also be going to the countryside in H Province, Qingyuan County, which is about 200 kilometers away from Lin City. The environment there is indeed more difficult. But I believe that our comrades are all good comrades and will overcome all difficulties. Su Qingsang didn't care. No matter how difficult Qingyuan County was, it couldn't be worse than the doctors going to Africa, right? Okay. I will send a copy of the specific departure time and itinerary to your email. The precautions and things to be prepared will also be explained in the email. If there is anything that you don't understand, you can come to me at any time. The meeting was simple and clear. It ended quickly. Su Qingsang was a little absent-minded. In the past, she didn't think much of it if she was going to the countryside, but now, Hu Jinyao's face flashed in her mind. If that guy knew that she was going to leave Lin City for a while, he would probably be unhappy, wouldn't he? Su Qingsang didn't realize that she seemed to understand Hu Jinyao's preferences more and more, and she could understand his feelings more and more. What? Hu Jinyao stared at Su Qingsang. You're going to the countryside? Yes. Su Qingsang looked at Hu Jinyao, not sure if he would be unhappy to hear the news. How long will you be gone for? About 20 days. This time, not only Qingyuan County, but also several towns under Qingyuan County. She looked at the itinerary and found that it was very tight. So long? Hu Jinyao's expression suddenly changed. He reached out and circled her in his arms, pressing his chin against her neck. Can you not go? No. Su Qingsang shook her head. This is the decision of the hospital. I have no reason not to go. Just say that you have something to do at home? Hu Jinyao. Could he stop fooling around? Her work was a very serious matter. Why did it seem like a game when it came to him? Wife. Hu Jinyao tightened his arms around her waist. Think about it. You have to go for 20 days. 20 days. Doesn't that mean that I can't hug you to sleep for 20 days? Hu Jinyao. Su Qingsang couldn't listen to it anymore. Can't you think about anything else other than this? How can I think about that? Hu Jinyao looked aggrieved. We are newlyweds. As he spoke, he pressed her down on the sofa, and his hands began to move. Honey, I can't bear for you to leave. Don't go to the countryside. Don't go to the countryside. Just ask for leave. Su Qingsang removed his hand, pushed him away and sat up. Su Qingsang took his hands away and sat up. I'm going to check the weather in Qingyuan. Also, what should I bring? Next week. Hu Jinyao stood up and followed her. Isn't it next week? Well, I is. Do you want me to help you? Do. Huaz? Su Qingsang knew him too well. Looking at his figure, she cleared her throat and said, Hu Jinyao, stop messing around. Wife. Su said, Hu Jinyao, what are you doing? Su Qingsang was startled by the sudden feeling of being suspended in the air. She instinctively put her arms around his neck. Don't you think it's too long for us to be apart for 20 days? She looked so beautiful that he wanted to go with her. Put me down first. No. Hu Jinyao refused. Wife, I think we're going to be apart for too long. Therefore, as compensation, we should start calculating the next 20 days, share first. Chapter 149. Before she could protest, her body had been carried back to the room. The door was closed and all the protests disappeared behind the door. Su Qingsang couldn't tell whether it was compensation or punishment. Shi Mingwan sat in the dining room. While waiting for the dishes to be served, she glanced at Su Qingsang and nodded from time to time. Not bad. It seems that you're living a good life. What nonsense are you talking about? Tisk, is it nonsense? Shi Mingwan looked at Su Qingsang and pursed her lips. Well, do you want to see your neck? You should wear a scarf before you go out, right? Ah. Su Qingsang exclaimed and quickly took out a mirror from her bag. She looked at her neck and found that there was a mark on the back of her neck. Su Qingsang blushed and looked up at Shi Mingwan. Did you bring any concealer? It's so big. Why would I need to cover up? Shi Mingwan laughed at her. It's so intense. Come on, tell me, how many times does Mr. Huo come in a night? Shi Mingwan. Su Qingsang couldn't bear it anymore. Don't forget that you're unmarried. Yes. You know that I'm unmarried? You put so much dog food in my mouth. Didn't you think that I would be disgusted? Seeing Su Qingsang's embarrassment, she waved her hand. Forget it, I won't laugh at you. I'm quite envious of you. Why should I be envious? Su Qingsang really didn't think that there was anything to be envious of. Think about it. You randomly got a man to marry, but this man is very good. He's handsome and nice to you. What's more, he's good at kung fu. Other people only want one thing, but you want so much. Do you think I should be envious of you? Su Qingsang was speechless. In fact, Hu Jinyao was beyond her imagination and knowledge. Ever since she got together with Hu Jinyao, the idea of just finding a man to live a casual life was getting farther and farther away. He did give her a lot of surprises. Are you envious? Hurry up and find your big brother. I promise he'll treat you better than Hu Jinyao treats me. Forget about me. Shi Mingwan thought of something, and the expression on her face suddenly became dejected. I don't think I'll be able to find dear brother in this life. Why do you say that? Su Qingsang couldn't bear to see her like this. Shi Mingwan smiled and looked out of the window. Qingsang, do you believe me? I really wasn't mistaken. The person I met last time was him. He admitted it. Oh. Shi Mingwan's eyes flashed with bitterness. He's engaged. How did you know? Because he came to my shop to order a wedding dress. Su Qingsang was silent. This matter? Wan, don't be like this. I think you'll definitely meet a better man. Really? Shi Mingwan turned around and said, all right. Was fine. I won't die without a man anyway. It's good that you can get over it. Su Qingsang didn't know what was going on with that big brother, but it had been so many years. Shi Mingwan had waited long enough. The waiter began to serve the dishes, and Su Qingsang's comforting words were unnecessary. Let's eat. Shi Mingwan picked up her chopsticks as she spoke. You'll be away for half a month. We'll meet again when you come back next time. Okay. Two extremely beautiful women were sitting by the window. A car passed by outside and it happened to be a red light. The people in the car kept staring at the two of them until the light turned green. Chapter 150. Honey. Hu Jinyao followed behind Su Qingsang and watched her pack her luggage. Do you really have to go? Su Qingsang didn't want to talk to him at all. She had already made up her mind last week. Get out of the way, I'll pack up. Wife, let me help you. Hu Jinyao, I'm begging you. Can you not make trouble? He kept loitering in front of her and she couldn't even pack her things properly. Honey. Hu Jinyao felt a little wronged. Can't you just look at me? Hu Jinyao. Su Qingsang lost her temper. I knew I was leaving last week, but I'm leaving tomorrow morning. I haven't packed my things yet. Why? Because of Hu Jinyao. Every time she tried to tidy up, he would make trouble. Not only did he not allow her to tidy him up, but he also did whatever he wanted to her. He always had a fallacious argument. He said that the two of them were about to separate, that he would starve her for many days, and that he would not be able to sleep well without his wife. She really couldn't do anything about his endless excuses and reasons. Even if she wanted to resist, she could only give in when she saw Hu Jinyao's aggrieved face. What about now? She was going to leave tomorrow and it was even an early morning bus. This person still didn't want her to pack her things? Actually, I can help you collect it. No, thank you. I'll be grateful if you don't make trouble. Su Qingsang saw that his hand was about to reach her again, so she took a big step back and said, Stop. Don't move. Honey. Hu Jinyao looked at Su Qingsang, his expression growing more and more aggrieved. You don't believe me? Yes. I don't believe you. It would be strange if she believed him again. During this period of time, thanks to him, her waist was about to break. Could she still believe him? Honey. Shut up. Actually, do you believe that I won't talk to you for a month if you keep talking? Hu Jinyao closed his mouth and made a zipping gesture with his lips. Su Qingsang was completely speechless. Helplessly, he turned around and continued to pack. Seeing that she was so focused, Hu Jinyao turned and left the room. Hu Jinyao didn't come back until Su Qingsang had packed everything up and laid down to rest. It was obvious that he had already showered. His body was clean and fresh and he smelled like shower gel. Honey. He lay down beside her and whispered, "Can I speak now?" Su Qingsang looked at him and said, "I didn't know you were so honest. Say what you want to say." Wife. Actually, I just wanted to say that if you weren't at home, I would definitely miss you. Seeing that Su Qingsang didn't say anything, he held her arm. It was true. I'll miss you a lot when you're not home. Su Qingsang looked at his face. From this angle, his facial features were handsome, and his jawline was almost perfect. Honey, do you miss me? Hu Jinyao held her in his arms and pressed his forehead against hers. His hot breath was on her cheek and his eyes were deep. Su Qingsang could clearly feel her heart beating fast. She didn't dare to face Hu Jinyao like that. That pair of deep eyes made her feel like she would be sucked into them. Do you want to? Honey, tell me. I'm sleepy. I'm going to sleep. Her heart was beating faster and faster. She simply turned her face away from him. Honey, sleep. Su Qingsang wasn't used to confiding in others. However, Hu Jinyao didn't want to let it go just like that. Chapter 151. I said sleep. No. Hu Jinyao seemed to be determined to waste time with her. If you don't say it, we'll do something else. Something that will impress you so deeply that you'll never forget it. Hu Jinyao. Do you want it? Tell me, do you want it? Yes. I'll miss you. Okay. Go down. Honey. Hu Jinyao leaned over and kissed her on the lips. I'll miss you too. I'll miss you very, very much. Okay, go to sleep. Honey, I'm telling you, you must be careful when you're out. Don't get too tired. I know. Also, stay away from men who have bad intentions. Especially the male doctors in your hospital. Hu Jinyao, what are you talking about? Okay, I won't say it. As long as you remember. Also, don't go to dangerous places. Hu Jinyao. His words were getting more and more ridiculous. Su Qingsang pulled his hand away and turned over to sleep. I'm going to the countryside to participate in a free clinic with the medical team. Do you think I'm going to fight? I'm worried about you. Hu Jinyao put his arms around her again. You're so stupid. I'm not afraid of you. Who are you calling stupid? Su Qingsang couldn't listen to it anymore. Who are you calling stupid? She was a top student in medical school, okay? Why did he sound like she was a retard? I'm stupid, I'm stupid. Hu Jinyao stopped talking. Honey, remember to video call me every day. Hu Jinyao, are you going to let me sleep? Sleep, sleep. I'll sleep right away. Hu Jinyao rubbed his face against the crook of her neck. Before she closed her eyes and went to sleep, he asked again softly. Well, your senior brothers won't go, right? Su Qingsang closed her eyes and covered her ears. She didn't want to listen to him at all. The medical team's car would leave at 7 in the morning. All the members gathered in the parking lot in front of the hospital. There were more than 20 people going this time. There were doctors and nurses. Hu Jinyao got up early and bought breakfast. When Su Qingsang got up and wanted to take a taxi to the hospital, he was already ready. He carried her luggage outside and said, Honey, let me give you a lift. Why are you up so early? Hu Jinyao usually got up early, but today he was even earlier than usual. Just look at the breakfast he prepared. My wife is leaving, of course I have to send you off. Su Qingsang couldn't help but feel touched. Looking at Hu Jinyao, she spoke from the bottom of her heart for the first time. Hu Jinyao, thank you. Wife, you are my wife. There's no need to thank me. After a quick breakfast, they got into the car together. By the time they arrived at the parking lot, nearly half of the crowd had already arrived. Hu Jinyao opened the trunk. She found that, in addition to her luggage, he had also bought her some snacks, water, and fruits. Honey, take this with you to eat on the road. Su Qingsang looked at the bag and knew that the store wouldn't open so early. So, Hu Jinyao got up early in the morning to prepare this? Hu Jinyao. Honey. Hu Jinyao didn't seem to see the touched look in her eyes. His eyes kept searching the people in the medical team who had already arrived. Are all the people who are going here? Su Qingsang glanced at them. After a few minutes, almost all the people had arrived. She nodded. Yes, they should all be here. Some of them were people from other departments. She didn't know them, but they should all be here. Hu Jinyao glanced at them again and suddenly smiled. Chapter 152. Hu Jinyao looked at Zhuo Hongchen, who had suddenly appeared, and suddenly turned to look at Su Qingsang. He moved closer to her ear and whispered, "Honey, didn't you say that your senior brother was going?" "I didn't say he wouldn't go." In fact, Su Qingsang was also a little surprised. She had seen the name list, and Zhuo Hongchen was not on it. How could senior brother be here? Compared to Hu Jinyao, Zhuo Hongchen's expression was much gentler. He was also carrying 2 bags in his hands, which looked even fuller than the one Hu Jinyao was carrying. Qingsang. Zhuo Hongchen acted as if he didn't see Hu Jinyao and put one of the bags in Su Qingsang's hand. "I bought you some food so that you can eat on the way." He placed the other bag in the hands of Director Li, who was leading the medical team. Su Qingsang's luggage had already been carried into the car by Hu Jinyao. In her hands were the snacks that Hu Jinyao had bought for her. Zhuo Hongchen put another bag in front of her. She looked at the bag and then at Hu Jinyao's gloomy face. She didn't reach out to take it. "What happened?" Zhuo Hongchen looked at her and then at Hu Jinyao. "It's just a little food. I believe Mr. Hu won't mind, right?" The corners of Hu Jinyao's mouth twitched. He minded. Of course he minded. Hu Jinyao put on a fake smile and stepped forward. He put one arm around Su Qingsang and took the bag from Zhuo Hongchen's hands with the other. "You're welcome. Why would I mind?" As he spoke, he put the bag in Director Li's hand. "All of you should thank Brother Zhuo." Zhuo Hongchen's smile was a little stiff. He turned to look at Su Qingsang and said, "Qingsang, I can't go this time. You have to take care of yourself." "We have to." "Don't worry, Qingsang will." Hu Jinyao interrupted him. "Qingsang is an adult. She will take good care of herself." The corners of Su Qingsang's mouth twitched. She didn't know who was the one who told her so many things like a child last night. Zhuo Hongchen looked at Su Qingsang. There were a lot of people in front of them and Hu Jinyao was there, so he couldn't say too much. "Director Li." Zhuo Hongchen turned to look at Director Li and said with a smile, "You've worked hard this time. Remember to take care of female comrades." Many people here knew that Zhuo Hongchen was Su Qingsang's senior. His instructions didn't cause much speculation. Now that he specifically pointed out the need to take care of female comrades, Director Li also smiled. "Okay. Don't worry, I will definitely take good care of female comrades." Su Qingsang didn't think too much about it. Senior brother Zhuo had always been nice to people. It was reasonable that he would give her something. Hu Jinyao's reaction surprised her. This guy was like a hedgehog every time he saw her close to another man. She was truly helpless. She felt more and more uncomfortable when she met the teasing gazes of the other members of the medical team. "Okay, I'm going to get in the car. You can go back first." "Honey." Hu Jinyao's hand was still on her shoulder. He glanced at Zhuo Hongchen. His meaning was obvious. If Zhuo Hongchen didn't leave, he wouldn't either. "That's enough," Su Qingsang said in a very low voice. "Go back. Don't you have to work today?" "It's still early for work. I'll see you off first. I'm already here. There are so many colleagues and seniors here. Don't worry." Chapter 153. This person he really was. Su Qingsang didn't know what to say. Hu Jinyao said, "Honey, you have to video chat with me every day or call me." "I know." And, Hu Jinyao. Su Qingsang didn't want him to continue. Look at other people. They all left right after they arrived. Only he was still standing there, refusing to leave. Hu Jinyao didn't say anything. He just squeezed her hand and whispered to her face, "Okay. Remember to miss me." Su Qingsang blushed. She looked at the others and felt that they were all laughing at her. However, Hu Jinyao didn't seem to feel it. He stood by her side and held her hand tightly. When it was time to leave, Hu Jinyao had to let go. Su Qingsang got in the car. When she turned to look at Hu Jinyao, there was a trace of reluctance in her eyes. She waved at Hu Jinyao and chose a seat by the window. Hu Jinyao watched the car drive away before he turned to leave. However, when he saw Zhuo Hongchen, he took a step forward and walked towards him. "Senior brother Zhuo, you got up early." "You're welcome. Not as early as you." "Of course I got up early. Qingsang is my wife. She's been away for so many days. Of course I have to see her off." Zhuo Hongchen looked at Hu Jinyao and frowned. "Are you proud?" "Not really." Hu Jinyao shook his head. "I'm just glad." Zhuo Hongchen didn't need to say the rest. Hu Jinyao was glad that he appeared at the right time and got Su Qingsang. "I hope you can always be glad." "I will. Thank you." After saying this, Hu Jinyao turned and walked to his car. However, he didn't go to the company. An hour later, his car appeared at the airport. Zhang Yang and Yang Wenchang were already waiting at the airport. "Mr. Hu." "Yes." Hu Jinyao put the car key in Zhang Yang's hand expressionlessly. Drive the car back for me. Let Wenchang go with me this time. Yes. Zhang Yang nodded. Don't worry, Mr. Hua. I've arranged everything. Yes. Hua Jinyao nodded and looked at Yang Wenchang. Let's go. After being away for so long, it's time to meet those people. Yes, sir. Yang Wenchang quickly followed Hua Jinyao into the boarding gate with anticipation. Destination Rong City. Rong City. Lin City was in the south and Rong City was in the north. It was already past the Mid-Autumn Festival, but Lin City was still very hot. Many people were wearing short-sleeved shirts. Rong Qing had to wear a windbreaker. The Hua family's main residence was a 20-minute drive from the city center. It would take an hour to get there from the airport. Hua Jinyao had already dealt with some documents in the car. When they arrived at the Hua Manor, he asked Yang Wenchang to return to the company first. He got out of the car and entered the house. Second young master, you're back? As soon as he entered the door, a servant greeted him and took the coat from his hands. Yes. Hua Jinyao nodded and glanced at the living room. The servant said, Sir has gone to the company. Madam had an appointment in the morning, so she went out. Old master is upstairs in the study. He heard you coming back just now and asked you to go up first. Got it? Hua Jinyao waved his hands and was about to go upstairs. However, a figure came down from upstairs first. The servant looked at Hua Jinyao and wanted to say something, but stopped on second thought. That person was obviously the person she didn't have time to tell just now. You can leave. Hua Jinyao looked at the person expressionlessly. The servant took the coat and left. Chapter 154. TSK. Finally willing to come back? I thought you were going to die in Lin City and never come back. Hua Yifan, the eldest son of Hua Jinyao's uncle, Hua Mingliang. Hua Mingliang's family did not usually live in the Hua family's main residence. It was rare for him to appear here. Hua Jinyao's grandfather, Hua Yangping, had 3 children. The eldest, Hua Mingguang, was Hua Jinyao's father. The second son, Hua Mingliang, had 2 sons, Hua Yifan and Hua Yang. He also had a daughter, Hua Manzi. Third brother, Hua Mingmei. She was married to Wei Nantian, the eldest son of the Wei family, who was also one of the upper-class families in Rong City. He gave birth to Wei Sihai and Wei Siming. The Hua family was a big family, and Hua Yangping had a brother, Hua Yangyuan, who did not engage in business, but walked the path of righteousness. One of his younger sisters, Hua Yangxiu, was married to the commander of an army. In other words, the Hua family was extremely famous and had connections in all the realms. However, the most famous one was Hua Yangping. He started from scratch and accumulated a huge amount of wealth. At the same time, they were very resourceful. Almost all the businesses that the Hua family invested in were profitable. This was also the reason why the headquarters of the Hua family was called Tianyu. Under the sky, there were areas that the Hua family was involved in. Hua Mingguang was the current chairman of Tianyu Company. After he retired from Huali, he started to take over Tianyu. Compared to Hua Yangping, his methods were fierce but not gentle. Among Hua Yangping's 3 children, he was the one he liked the most. Because of Hua Mingguang's existence, the first branch of the Hua family had the most say in the entire Hua family. Although Hua Mingliang and Hua Mingmei both held positions in Tianyu, their authority was much smaller than Hua Mingguang's. This also made Hua Yifan, who was the younger cousin, very unhappy. In his opinion, he was no less capable than his cousin, Hua Jinyao. Yifan, you must be joking. Rong City is my home. How could I not come back? Really? Hua Yifan sneered. Do you still think of this place as your home? I thought you were calling Lin City your home now. After all, Big Aunt and Big Uncle have been waiting for you to come back for so long, but you still haven't come back? Opening up a new market will naturally be more hectic and tiring. Not to mention my parents, even my grandpa understands me. But, Hua Jinyao glanced at Hua Yifan and chuckled. Of course, you wouldn't understand such a situation. After all, your ability is limited. How could I let you do something like opening up a new territory? Hua Jinyao. Hua Yifan didn't even call him cousin anymore. Don't go too far. Am I wrong? I'm really sorry. Hua Jinyao spread his hands. Usually, the truth is always unpopular. Excuse me, I still have to go up and look for Grandpa. He walked past Hua Yifan and headed upstairs. Hua Yifan's cold voice sounded behind him. Hua Jinyao, don't be so smug. No matter how capable you are, if Uncle doesn't support you, don't even think about sitting in that position. Don't worry. Even if he doesn't support me, he won't support you, Hua Jinyao said without looking back. After all, your aptitude is too ordinary. Ignoring Hua Yifan's sullen face, Hua Jinyao went straight upstairs. The main residence of the Hua family had 5 floors. Hu Yangping lived on the 2nd floor. In addition to his bedroom, there was also a study that was specially for him. When Hu Jinyao entered the door, Hu Yangping had just finished writing a piece of calligraphy. He took a step back and looked at his writing. He didn't even raise his head when he heard the door open. Chapter 155. What? You know I'm back? Hu Yangping's voice didn't sound old, but rather quite energetic. Hu Jinyao took a few steps forward and stood beside him. Grandpa, your handwriting is getting better and better. Don't flatter me. Hu Yangping glanced at him, and no one could tell whether he was happy or angry on his expressionless face. I'm old and won't fall for this. Grandpa, what are you saying? How is this flattery? Hu Jinyao pointed at the words written by Hu Yangping and said, Look here and here. The strokes are strong and vigorous. To be honest, Grandpa's handwriting is getting stronger and stronger. Hu Yangping stepped back and sat down on the chair. He picked up the cup of tea beside him and took a sip. Hu Jinyao. Hu Jinyao stood up straight. Every time Hu Yangping called his full name, it meant that he was very angry. Grandpa, if you have something to say, just say it. There's no need to shout so loudly. If you're afraid that I'll shout, then don't do anything that will make me angry. How did I make you angry? Hu Yangping was over 80 years old, but he was full of energy and vigor. Seeing that Hu Jinyao was pretending to be dumb, he sneered. Do you think I don't know what you did in Lin City? Grandpa. His voice carried the meaning of begging for mercy. I'm old and you always have your own ideas, so I'm too lazy to care about you. Talk to your father yourself. Hu Jinyao's expression changed slightly. He nodded and said, Grandpa, don't worry. As long as you don't object, I'm relieved. What are you worried about? Hu Yangping glared at him. If she's really a good girl, bring her back. Is there anything shameful about the Hua family's eldest granddaughter-in-law? Grandpa. He wanted to bring Su Qingsang back, but now was not the time. Don't blame me for not reminding you. Your mother has already helped you secure the position. Hu Jinyao's expression changed. He pursed his lips into a straight line and stood there with his brows tightly knitted together. Grandpa, I understand. Thank you, Grandpa. Hu Jinyao took a shower and changed. Then he returned to his study to deal with some official matters. At dinner time, Hu Jinyao's parents came back. A servant came up and asked Hu Jinyao to go downstairs for dinner. When Hu Jinyao went downstairs, his parents Hu Mingguang and Lu Tongjia were already seated at the dining table. You still know to come back? It was exactly the same as old master Hu Yangping's opening remarks. Hu Mingguang looked at his son with obvious dissatisfaction in his eyes. Dad, what are you talking about? This is my home. Of course I have to come back. You still know that this is your home? Hu Mingguang snorted. I thought you didn't know where your home was. Hu Jinyao pretended not to hear her. He smiled at Aunt Lu, who had pulled out a chair for him. Thank you, Aunt Lu. Turning to look at Hu Mingguang, he raised his eyebrows in confusion. How could you not know? The Hua family was such a unique place that everyone in Rong City knew about it. I'm no exception. Lu Tongjia was infuriated by his reaction. Enough. What's with that cheeky smile every day? How old are you, yet you still don't behave properly? Hu Jinyao rubbed his nose and sat up straight on purpose, placing his hands on his knees. He turned to look at Lu Tongjia. He gestured for her to shut up again. Lu Tongjia was so angry that she almost vomited blood. Hu Jinyao. Tell me I'm not deaf. Chapter 156. Finally he calmed down. There was no anger on his face, only indifference. Since you're back, put your marriage with Ruoli on the agenda as soon as possible. I've already made a good day for you. The 30th of next month will be a good day. The Su family has also agreed. The wedding will be organized by the wedding company. You just have to attend. Mom. Hu Jinyao was still sitting in the same position, but he turned his head to look at Lu Tongjia. I forgot to tell you. I'm already married. Lu Tongjia's expression changed again. She stared at Hu Jinyao, trying to suppress her anger. If you're talking about your marriage with that illegitimate daughter of unknown origin in Lin City, don't mention it. I won't admit it. I only admit that Ruoli is my daughter-in-law. Mom, you seem to be mistaken about one thing. Qingsang and I have already gotten our marriage certificate. We are legally married. If you want me to marry Su Ruoli, aren't you asking me to commit bigamy? You can still get a divorce after you get married. Lu Tongjia said in a tone that left no room for negotiation. That ignorant woman only wants money. She can be sent away with money. Hua Jinyao's expression began to change. He wanted to say something but Lu Tongjia didn't give him a chance. I'll give you half a month to break up with that woman. The Hua family can give you as much money as you want. In half a month, you must come back to Rong City to prepare for your wedding with Ruoli. She said it without hesitation. Hua Yangping and Hua Mingguang, who were at the dining table, just watched. Hua Jinyao nodded and looked at Lu Tongjia with a chuckle. What if I say no? Hua Jinyao, are you purposely going against me? Why would I deliberately go against you? Hua Jinyao shrugged. It's just that I'm already married and I don't want to get a divorce. I'm not going against you. Hua Jinyao, please be clear about one thing. Everything you have now is given by the Hua family. Lu Tongjia suddenly stood up. If you don't break up with that woman, then don't blame me for being rude. Hua Jinyao's expression also changed. He put away his cynical attitude, stood up and looked at Lu Tongjia. Then Mom, what do you want me to do? What do you think? Lu Tongjia sneered. He disobeyed his elders and made a private commitment. What do you think I can do to an unfilial son like you? Do whatever you want. Anyway, I can't divorce Qing Sang or marry Su Ruoli. If you want a marriage alliance, you can ask Hua Yifan or even Hua Yang to go. At the very least, there was Wei Sihai and his cousins. I don't understand. Why do you insist on my marriage? Do you think I want to pick you? If it wasn't for him. If it weren't for... Lu Tongjia suddenly paused. She was trying her best to control her emotions. Hua Yangping and Hua Mingguang didn't look happy at this moment. They obviously knew what Lu Tongjia was going to say next. Hua Jinyao also knew that, but his expression didn't even change. He just stood there like a pine tree. If it weren't for... Lu Tongjia put her hands on the table. Before she could finish her sentence, Hua Jinyao's phone rang. Su Qing Sang was on the other end of the line. At this moment, all the emotions on Hua Jinyao's face disappeared without a trace. He picked up his phone, turned around and walked out of the dining room to answer the phone. Hello. Su Qing Sang's voice came from the other end of the line. She sounded a little tired. Chapter 157. Hua Jinyao very sensitively captured the trace of emotion in her voice. Nothing. Su Qing Sang yawned. A large part of the road was under construction when we came here. It could have taken us 2.5 hours, but it took us 4 hours. Then, before we settled down, the hospital we stayed in had a car accident. A bunch of injured people were sent here and we all went up to help. Now we finally have some time. Honey, you've worked hard. Hua Jinyao's voice was not serious as usual. It's a pity that I'm not by your side. Otherwise I could give you a massage. I don't want your massage. Forget it. Didn't he say he was going to give her a massage every single time, but the massage turned out to be a different story? If you don't want my massage, then what should I do? Hua Jinyao seemed to be very distressed. I'm not by your side right now. I can't help you if you're tired. Nothing, I just want to tell you. Actually, she wasn't particularly tired. It wasn't like she had never been more tired before. But strangely, it seemed that whenever he was by her side, she couldn't help but want to tell him. She wanted to hear him comfort her and call her wife in that voice she was already familiar with. How about this, honey? Hua Jinyao seemed to have thought of something. I'll kiss you. Promise you won't be tired. Hua Jinyao. You? Hua Jinyao slapped the phone with a pop sound. Feeling that it wasn't enough, he kissed it 2 or 3 more times. Honey, do you feel my kiss of love? Su Qing Sang blushed. Even though she knew that Hua Jinyao couldn't see through the phone, she couldn't help blushing. Stop it. You don't feel it? Then do it again. Hua Jinyao. Su Qing Sang couldn't stand it anymore. That's enough. I'm going to eat. Eating at this time? Hua Jinyao was here because Hua Mingguang and the others came back late. Why was Su Qing Sang so late? Yes. I have no choice. I've been busy until now. She was about to eat. She remembered that Hua Jinyao had asked her to call him when she arrived. Su Qing Sang had been busy with other doctors before, but now she thought of contacting Hua Jinyao. Then wife, hurry up. If you're hungry, I'll feel bad. Glib. How is this glib tongue? Hua Jinyao retorted with a serious face. I don't care, honey. I'll check you after you come back. If you don't take good care of yourself and end up losing weight or becoming lighter, I will punish you. How do you want to punish me? Su Qing Sang didn't believe that he would dare to do anything to her. How do you think I can punish you? Hua Jinyao smiled meaningfully. He spat out 2 words. Su Qing Sang's face turned even redder. I'm not going to talk to you anymore. I'm hanging up. Honey. Hua Jinyao stopped her. You seem to have forgotten something, haven't you? What is it? What do you think? Hua Jinyao didn't mind reminding her. I've already sent you so many love kisses. Are you going to hang up on me just like that? Su Qingsang was defeated by him. In the end, she had no choice but to kiss the phone. Hua Jinyao was satisfied and finally let her go. He hung up the phone and turned around, only to find Hua Mingguang standing behind him. Hua Jinyao wasn't embarrassed at all when he heard him talking on the phone. He walked past him and continued in the direction of the restaurant. Hua Mingguang blocked his way and stared at Hua Jinyao with a serious expression. Chapter 158. Hearing this, Hua Jinyao couldn't help but want to laugh. Dad, what are you talking about? Qingsang and I even got a marriage certificate. You can get a divorce after you get married. Hua Mingguang frowned. I believe the Su family won't mind. But I do mind. Hua Jinyao interrupted him. I mind my divorce. I don't mind who I marry either. Hua Jinyao, don't be too willful. Don't forget that your surname is Hua. Yes, my surname is Hua. Hua Jinyao nodded and didn't deny it. So, you want to use this to kidnap me? It's not kidnapping. I want to remind you of the responsibilities and obligations that you should bear as a descendant of the Hua family. Hua Mingguang's eyes were sharp, and his face, which was somewhat similar to Hua Jinyao's, had an undeniable strength. I refuse. Hua Jinyao looked at him. The father and son were similar in height and appearance. The same aura. Hua Jinyao. You, don't say anything else. Hua Jinyao's eyes flashed with gloominess. I know what you want to say. I know it all. But I won't listen. I refuse. Hua Jinyao said this and turned to walk out. It seems that you don't welcome me in this house. In that case, I'd better not be an eyesore for now. Before Hua Mingguang could stop him, Hua Jinyao had already strode out the door. Shi Mingguan's wedding dress design studio had been open for 2 years. She designed high-end dresses and wedding dresses. She had a small reputation in the industry. People who knew her all said that she was a genius designer. Even if she hadn't been able to squeeze into the top domestic designers, there were many people in Lin City who asked her to design wedding dresses. The wedding dress that Su Qingsang wore before was designed by Shi Mingguan, but she didn't expect that one day Su Peijian would also come to her to design a wedding dress. Looking at Qiu Yanba and Su Peijian in front of her, Shi Mingguan really didn't want to accept business from these two people. Miss Su, Mr. Qiu, I wonder if you have any special requests. Su Peijian's face was cold and she looked very unhappy. In her opinion, she should go to Milan or Paris to find a top-notch designer to design a wedding dress that suited her status. But Qiu Yanba actually brought her to Shi Mingguan? Can you order wedding dresses from Milan and Paris? Su Peijian looked proud. Shi Mingguan resisted the urge to roll her eyes. Sorry to disappoint you. We only sell wedding dresses designed by me. Su Peijian didn't even think about sitting down. She turned around and looked at Qiu Yanba. Yanba, let's go. Don't worry. Qiu Yanba glanced at Shi Mingguan and put his hands on Su Peijian's shoulders. Just let her design it. If you're satisfied, then use it. If you're not, then we'll go to Paris or Milan to order, okay? Su Peijian didn't look too happy, but she didn't object. Shi Mingguan had no choice but to take out a pen and paper and listen to Su Peijian's instructions. Shi Mingguan wrote down Su Peijian's request in detail and seriously. Then she sent them off with a fake smile on her face. When he entered the house, he couldn't help but call Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang was very busy. Although Qingyuan County was a small county, it had many towns and villages. This time they had to go to every village for free medical consultation. 20 days in 9 towns and villages, an average of 2 days in each town. This meant that they didn't have time to rest at all and had to go to the next town after resting. Chapter 159. She was so tired that she wanted to lie in bed immediately when she returned to the arranged residence after finishing her work at night. Even the video call with Hua Jinyao at night ended in a hurry. She had just finished seeing a patient that day when she received a call from Shi Mingguan. What's wrong, Qingsang? It was already afternoon, and fewer people came to see the doctor than in the morning. Su Qingsang greeted the doctor next to her. She took her phone and went outside to answer the call. Qingsang. Shi Mingguan told Su Qingsang what happened today. What do you think your young lady wants to do? Su Peijian asked Shi Mingguan to order a wedding dress? Why did it sound so magical to Su Qingsang? I don't know. Su Qingsang didn't know much about Su Peijian, but she said, I think you might be thinking too much. Maybe she just admires your design. How is that possible? You didn't see her face when she entered the door. She looked so arrogant, as if I owed her money. I really wanted to tell her to come if she wanted to. I don't want to wait on you. Don't? Su Qingsang smiled. Why not design? Just take it. And do it well. When the time comes, make a lot of money from her. That's your style, Miss Shi? Yes. That's true. Shi Mingwan nodded. I think it's not normal for Su Peijian to come to me. I'm thinking about what I have that she can plot against me. You're thinking too much. Does she want to deal with me through you? That's not Su Peijian's personality. That's true. Shi Mingwan smiled and felt that she was thinking too much. Well, you're still in the countryside. I'll talk to you later. Remember to take good care of yourself and don't get too tired. Yes. I know. You too. Shi Mingwan gave a few more instructions, hung up the phone and turned around. She found Qiu Yanba standing behind her. She was shocked and couldn't even hold her phone. You, sorry? Qiu Yanba smiled calmly. I dropped something here. As he spoke, he picked up a wallet from where he had been sitting. Shi Mingwan didn't notice it just now. By the way, you just said that Qingsang went to the countryside? Yes. Go to Qingyuan. Shi Mingwan was halfway through her sentence when she suddenly looked at Qiu Yanba defensively. Mr. Qiu, why do you care about this? It's nothing. I was just asking. Qiu Yanba's expression was indifferent. Speaking of which, I've been working with Hu Jingyao recently, so I'm just asking. You don't need to be so nervous. Although Shi Mingwan felt that it was strange, she didn't think too much about it. She sent Qiu Yanba off with a smile, not noticing the flash of scheming light in his eyes. After hanging up the phone, Su Qingsang found that it was raining outside, and the number of patients had begun to decrease. Today was her 9th day in the countryside. They had already visited 4 towns. Tomorrow he would go to the 5th village. Everyone packed up and planned to leave for another town the next morning. After midnight, the rain became heavier and heavier. The next morning, when the medical team was about to set off, it was still raining. Everyone looked at Director Li, waiting for his instructions. Director Li took out his phone to check the time and check the weather forecast. It's been raining and it won't stop for the entire morning. It's only a 2-hour drive to Gaoye town. Let's hurry up and set off now. Since Director Li said so, everyone carried their things into the car and got in together. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.